We do have a quorum present in person, Mayor. I do have some attendees that are virtual as well, some board members. I did want to let everybody know that if you would like to speak on your screens, the tablets in front of you, if you touch the screen, there's 3 little dots to the bottom right. If you hit more, there's a raised hand function. Did I say that correctly, Nick? Okay.
So everybody here is present. We're not doing this today. We're doing,
It's actually your preference. If you want them to do 10 cards.
no, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure,
Yes,
you know, it's
and if
just,
they struggle and they put their 10 card up, I'll let you know too.
okay.
I have
so
staff that have eyes like hawks and
That'll
send
be-
me a note of who's in
That'll be
order.
our backup. Okay.
And then if your microphone is off, the virtual attendees cannot hear you. So if this is red, then they can hear you. If it's blank, they can't hear you.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, we'll, for those that are members that are attending virtually, they will need to give us an extraordinary circumstance for their attendance virtually, and we'll need to approve that. In my opinion, the desire to avoid COVID infection could be considered as a extraordinary circumstance.
Mr. Goldman, can we do that as a blanket approval once we
Yes.
have the
Yes,
individuals who are
I
going
think
to
you
attend?
can.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else before we officially open the meeting?
No, Mayor.
All right. So it's, what time is it? It's, that's not, leave him alone. Enjoy. It's 9:01. It's Thursday, December 17th. I'd like to open the meeting of the Palm Beach Transportation Planning Agency meeting. And at this time, to open the meeting, I will ask Vice Mayor Wanworth if he would do the invocation for us.
Thank you, Chair Pinto. Would everybody please rise? And I'm certainly not going to be as eloquent as Mr. Wilson, but bow your heads. In this season of miracles, let us all take a moment to think of where we've come over the last 9 months. Our community has come together. We have met this pandemic and we are beating it. We have a vaccine that should be here very soon. Let us all work towards making sure that our community stays safe, healthy, and mobile. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before I ask for the roll call, I'd just like to thank everyone for being able to be here today. As you can see, some of the ground rules have changed. The exemption that we once had where we were permitted to conduct our meetings totally virtually if we needed to is no longer in place. So I think you all got notifications that it was imperative pretty much for us to be here physically today. And we do have a process to go through with, as mentioned, with regard to anyone who is attending virtually. So with that, Marge, can you take the roll call?
Yes, Mayor. At this time, I'm only asking those board members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you to unmute your microphones by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. Alternates, please also state your name if you are attending on behalf of a TPA board representative. Joseph Anderson. Joni Brinkman.
Here.
Joel Flores.
Present.
Stephen Grant. Jim Koretsky.
Present.
Douglas Lawson. Maria Marino.
Here.
Melissa McKinley. Michael Napoleon.
Here.
Christina Lambert.
Here.
Joseph Paduzzi. Shelley Petrolia. Fred Pinto.
Here.
Chelsea Reed.
Here.
Maria Sachs will be absent. Scott Singer. Andy Thompson. Pam Triolo is excused. Robert Weinroth.
Here.
Greg Weiss.
Here.
Steve Wilson will be absent. We have a quorum in person, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm glad to hear we have a quorum, and I hope everyone is comfortable. We tried to come up with a seating arrangement that would be compliant with the recommendations for social distancing. But if you want to continue to wear your mask, obviously, if you need to speak, you could remove your mask. But are we okay with the seating? I know we got the 2 tiers here, but we're trying to make this work as best as possible. Thank you. Now, regarding those who are not present and who are attending remotely, Marge, do we have to do a roll call for them or have them respond to their rationale for not being able to be here?
So, Mr. Chair, under modifications to the agenda, I do have some language to read, and then I will go through those that are appearing virtually. So, Mr. Chair, pursuant to state law, a quorum of the TPA board must be physically present at the advertised meeting site in order to conduct the meeting and take action as a body. However, the Florida Attorney General has previously opined that so long as a quorum is physically present at the meeting site, additional members may participate remotely, provided that they have a significant circumstance that justifies their absence, with significant circumstance being reasonably determined by the physically present members. I have a few members that have provided a brief explanation of the significant circumstance preventing their in-person attendance. I will read the names and the reasoning so that the board may determine if these members will be admitted into the meeting as virtual participants. Please note that voting members approved to participate remotely will be enabled to participate in debate, and also that they must vote unless they have documented a conflict of interest on a particular item. The first response I received was from Andy Thompson for Boca Raton. He was hoping to participate in the meeting remotely because his wife is 9 months pregnant and due to give birth today on December 17th. He needs to
I'm not
stay
sure
close
that's
to
gonna
home in
qualify.
case
We're
she
gonna
goes
have to
into
have a vote
labor.
on that.
The other one is from Scott Singer, also from the city of Boca Raton. He would like to attend Thursday's meeting virtually for the reason of some health and family member concerns that are also related to the COVID-19 epidemic. I also have additional members that would like to attend virtually, but that did not provide me a written response. And if you'll bear with me while I find their names, I have Mac Bernard on behalf of Commissioner Melissa McKinley. And I did have Steve Wilson, but I'm sorry, I forgot that he had to leave the meeting. So I only have Mac Bernard, excuse me, on behalf of Melissa McKinley that did not provide a written response.
All right, so are these, everyone you just named, are they actually
Yes.
online now? Are
So
they-
I have Scott Singer, Mac Bernard, and Andy Thompson present online.
They're present online, okay.
Yes, sir.
I see Ms. Petrolia is also on. Why don't we poll? what-
So the ones that are showing on the screen are the ones that are in person. I will have staff remove them. We were expecting
Oh, okay.
these other members to be present in person, and they aren't here at this time.
Mr. Chair, can we poll who's on the line and then we can have an approval of the people
Yes.
who are attending virtually?
So can we get the people online to
Sure, I can allow them
take
to
an
speak.
attendance, I guess?
So Mayor Singer, I have allowed you to talk. You can unmute yourself. Commissioner Bernard, I have also done the same. And Councilmember Thompson, I have done the same for you as well.
Thank you. This is Scott Singer. I respectfully request the opportunity to participate for the reasons outlined in my correspondence. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. Do we have Commissioner Bernard and,
Commissioner Bernard, are you present?
Yes, I am. This is County Commissioner Mac Bernard. I had a previous engagement and I was told about the meeting yesterday, so that's the reason why I'm not able to attend in person.
And this is Councilman Andy Thompson with the city of Boca. As I mentioned in my email, my wife is going to give birth at any moment. So I was told to avoid the doghouse. I needed to stay close to home.
no, you're doing the right thing, absolutely. Okay, so with that, is there anyone here present who has any objections to having the 3 participants remote? Seeing none? We will move forward. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Is there anything else, Marge, we have to do in this regard?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, at this time, we're on agenda item 1D, which is general comments from the public. And these are comments from the public who want to comment on something that may not be on our agenda today. Do we have any advanced comments from members of the public on this regard?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not receive any general public comments either virtually or in person.
Is there anyone that's out there now virtually who would like to raise their hand for a public comment?
I do not have any hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone physically here who wants to? We have a hand raised back there. Please come up, sir. Did we get a card in advance?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, please come up.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Richard Vassalotti, 12839 70th Place North in the acreage. I am on the agenda for today. I'm going to be introduced as a new member of the Citizens Advisory Council. Something I would like to get on a future agenda, not to get into it today, is a situation I've spoke with Indian Trails board members regarding four-way stop signs in the acreage. There's a discussion, and we can provide better information in the future on this, that supposedly there has been approval by the county, but Indian Trails not being a policing authority, lawyers state that they cannot have four-way stop signs. So maybe we can get this on the agenda, get something figured out with the county engineers and Indian Trails, and we can provide more information on that if we can just get that on a future agenda.
Nick, can you make a note to follow up with him to have a discussion about what's involved here? Okay.
That's it. Thank you so
sir.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, no one else who wants to make a comment, public comment on item not on the agenda? If not, I'll close public comment on items not on the agenda at this time. We're going to be taking comments from all of you, but before, I'd like to just share some information with you. Last week, I had the pleasure of attending the virtual South Florida Transportation Summit. There were some very interesting speakers with very renowned backgrounds and experience in the general topic of transportation. And it was, I found it very exciting and interesting that the key theme that came from all of these speakers was that we're at a point, a juncture where organizations like as ours and municipalities and counties need to start thinking about the future differently than we have in the past. And the difference is we need to embrace the concept of really moving forward with new public transportation solutions and options, and integrate that into our strategy for land use planning as we go forward. But clearly their message was we need to get beyond just building roads for more cars. And as you know, this is a topic we've talked about a little bit here. I will like to share with you that going forward, don't know it'll be necessarily in January, but early next year, I will be working with the staff for us to put together a presentation and discussion points on this very topic. And hopefully as a body, as the TPA board, we can come to some determinations on what we're committed to moving forward in that regard or not committed to. But we'll be doing that. You want to add something on the summit, Nick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe just in addition, I wanted to mention I had the opportunity to participate as a panelist together with my counterparts for the Broward MPO and the Miami-Dade TPO, where we talked about the vision for regional transportation investments. And I agree wholeheartedly with what Mayor Pinto just said, that the region seems to be migrating, pivoting, if you will, from a focus on road-based investments in transportation to a multimodal transportation system. And I think Palm Beach County is poised very well to ride that change into the future. And so we're excited to work with you, with our various communities throughout Palm Beach County on what that's going to look like and how we can implement those kinds of investments going forward.
And just as a closing point on that, I think the objective as we go early into the first quarter of next year for this body should be to take that concepts or those concepts and discussions and move it from being something that's abstract to something that's more real and tangible, and gives us a kind of a roadmap to, no pun intended, roadmap, to how we could move towards those kind of goals in terms of turning the future into now, so to speak. So with that, the floor is open. Any members of the board who would like to make comments? Vice Mayor Wentworth.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting, as I drove in here today, I was listening to NPR and they were talking about MCOR and the money that the state is going to be potentially investing in the infrastructure development of the transportation corridor, and the feeling that perhaps that's a boondoggle of sorts, and that we should be looking as a state to be making more of an investment in public transportation. And as a body, the county commissioners this week were dealing with the strategic plan for the county as we start our budget discussions. Obviously, you need to know where you're going before you start building a budget. And we were using one of the words or one of the phrases that Commissioner Weiss brought to the table of access equity. And I think that we need to be looking at that going forward. I think the pandemic has demonstrated that we need to have ways of moving people both virtually and physically to their jobs, to their educational facilities. And so I think that there's going to be a real need to look at public transportation, broadband, and looking at the investments in those areas as we go forward to respond to the changes in the patterns of commuting that have been brought on by the pandemic, and I don't think are going to recede once the vaccine is dispensed and people are taking off these masks. So I think the pandemic has probably accelerated what was going to be a move away from physical meetings and to virtual meetings and to virtual learning. And I think we have to embrace that as we go forward in our planning for the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, you make a valid point. The landscape of a lot of things and how we did things, we will see some changes in that, and we will see some shifts. We're already seeing shifts in the marketplace in terms of the impacts of this different way of doing things and this using this virtual model to achieve things that previously that wasn't something that we would do. So it's going to be an interesting going forward. Go ahead, March.
Mayor
Somebody
Pinto,
stay
I
hand
have Mayor Flores followed by Commissioner Weiss.
Okay. Mayor Flores, you're on.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, it's great to be back here. I know that we have adapted and overcome over the last 9 months. And kudos to the staff here for making it a safe environment. I truly feel that we're socially distant. So Nick, great job. Technology, everything looks great. So my point that I wanted to bring up, and maybe perhaps it's just an update from the TPA board or some of the people that are going to be presenting later, but I feel like 95 between north of, I want to say Gateway, Boynton Beach Boulevard, I think up to West Palm, that road has completely deteriorated where you hit some bumps, and I've been driving it a little bit more lately, but I feel that road is just completely deteriorated. I think that we need to pay attention to that and get on the different parties to make sure that is addressed at some point. And obviously, it's my community, the ones that use those exits to be able to trek west or east in that area. So if we can just get an update of when that is going to be resurfaced, because I think it's needed as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair, if you give me just 30 seconds, I'll have an answer.
30 seconds, that quick. Okay. While you're working on that, Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I also was able to attend the Transportation Summit last week and found that it was a lot of good information, and the event itself being held virtually was done very well. They had an area before the meeting started where we could network, and that was interesting. And so we could go to tables virtually and talk with folks sitting at those tables. So I thought it was very well done, and look forward to being able to attend events like that in the future. And then Commissioner Vice Mayor Weinroth, hit on some of the points actually that I wanted to speak to this board about, which is about this equitable access and specifically of broadband, to have, if you will, avoid people having to get in their cars to go to work, to go to school, to go to the doctors, to be able to do things virtually. And we've prepared heat maps throughout the county of lack of access to broadband. And it is ubiquitous throughout Palm Beach County, where there are many communities that lack access to high-speed internet to be able to perform these functions, which would avoid having to build more roads, having to have more buses, to having more school buses, all those things, and potentially, helping us with improving the quality of life for everybody. So I think it's incumbent upon this body to also be looking at ways to help improve that access so that everybody in our community has a fair and equal access to broadband. And then the last point I just want to make, and I do appreciate everything that's being done to try and keep everybody physically distanced, but I did notice the chairs over in where the audience are. And I have to say, that doesn't comply with CDC guidelines, best practices. So maybe rethinking on how that's done for the next meeting. Thank you.
Maybe we limit the number of chairs and have them spread out.
Correct.
Yeah. So noted. Thank you. March?
So, Chair, I also have, Commissioner now, Marino and Councilmember Reed with their hands raised, as well as
But I
Councilmember
think Jim was
Koretsky. Yes,
first.
Jim,
Okay.
and then followed by Marino and then Reed.
I certainly agree with what had been said about, we need to, COVID has caused a lot of changes that we should be well informed about the impacts of that and going forth plan accordingly. I will say though, I'm still, but as I've been observing that to kind of predict as an engineer myself, what's going to happen, I don't know. I think to me, the jury's still out because I tell you what, is on my small cul-de-sac that I live, I can't imagine, it's unbelievable how many Amazon deliveries we get. Just that alone. So it's funny how the shift, I'm not sure the shift has reduced traffic in one regard, going to get something from the store because it's still coming in by somebody delivering it. And they don't coordinate. It's amazing. They come every 15 minutes or something, so they don't. And then secondly, I just want to say that, the county engineer had presented, I think last meeting, insightful perspectives about how traffic was changing. And I would like to make sure we're being kept informed about that. Because I am stunned as I go into work in a place where majority of people are working from home. And one would think I'd have a nice free ride with little traffic. It seems like everybody but the company I work for is coming into work because, if you judge by the traffic. So at least on the roads that I go on, it's amazing. I would have expected less traffic than I'm experiencing. So I'm puzzled by what I'm observing.
It's back.
I'm puzzled by what I'm observing, and I just say, but we need to understand the change in behaviors and change in technology and all of that, to plan accordingly. So I just want to, thank you.
Commissioner Marino.
Good morning, all. I just want to say, one, that I'm pleased to be back and resume being interested in TPA. This is a great organization. And I do recall my first meeting several years ago, where I think I said to Nick, why is it that we're always just talking about concrete? So I like the fact that we are now including mobility in our plans and that it's not just something here in the county that we're thinking of, and it's global. And about maybe a year ago, yes, pre-pandemic, that we sat in this room and had a conference from a lot of other people from other counties were here and talked about how they were changing their land use patterns and they were changing their parking requirements to get people out of their cars so that people would find other ways to move around. We do need to pay attention to TODs as we go along because we are going to have to urbanize in certain areas and give those people other opportunities. But also we have to realize too, during a pandemic, people don't want to be in a bus or someplace with other people at the moment. So we're sort of in this quandary of a time where we know where we want to go, but we also know where we are right now because of our restrictions. So we need to pay attention to both. Thank you.
Okay, who's next?
Councilmember Reed.
Good morning. I'm Chelsea Reed. Nice to
Okay,
meet
hi.
you. I did last week also attend the Florida Chamber Summit and the Southeast Florida Transit Summit and Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And again and again and again, it's TOD that keeps coming up and the emphasis on mobility. But our history has mostly been about widening roads and thinking about cars and not people. And I'm delighted that my first time here, we're actually talking about not doing that anymore. And hopefully we can appropriate our federal funding properly now going forward with this philosophy. Then also, I don't know if you guys know, but on November 6th, the city of Palm Beach Gardens did write in TOD. So we have accepted it and pushed forward with it as well. And as we go forward and think about these things, we also have to really consider that first mile, last mile. Doesn't matter what we build, because if we can't get people there, like what Commissioner Weiss was saying, this is what we really need to take care of. So I wanted to thank you for bringing it up and also brag a little bit about my municipality and their TOD. Thank you.
No, I'm so glad to hear you bring up the concept of first mile, last mile. That's going to be a key component to any strategy if we're serious about this going forward. As I said, we will be looking to create a formal agenda item, I would say in the first quarter of next year with a formal presentation. And hopefully the outcome of that process would be, one, we'll know as a body, are we really aligned on this? And are we really committed to this? And if we're not, what are the issues on that? And if we are, we will have a game plan to actually begin moving forward with trying to make that a reality. As I said, take it so it's no longer abstract. It becomes something real that we can move forward with as a body. So thank you. Is anyone else, Marge?
I have Councilmember Brinkman.
Hi, how you doing,
Hi,
Tony?
good morning. I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Weiss's comments on equitable accessibility, especially to broadband. And as we move forward in that discussion, some of the issues aren't necessarily accessibility to it, but affordability to it, especially in the educational aspect of it. So I just wanted to put that out on the table that some of our residents may be able to get it, but they just cannot afford it. So that I think that needs to be wrapped into the discussion as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyone else?
I see no other and virtual hands raised. Oh, just kidding. Mayor Graham.
Good evening, or good morning, sorry. So aspect to Commissioner Weiss and Commissioner Brinkman, the Education Foundation is also partnering with the Quantum Foundation for navigators. The aspect of giving the internet to somebody in today's day is very different than the dial-up we had 20 years ago, or 25 years ago now, wow. And that's kind of where, when we give, when we have that equitable access to the internet, we also need to be wary of it and the education. We do see horror stories of certain governments around the country or around the world using the internet for propaganda to control their people. So we need to make sure that we're also educating them of the pitfalls of the internet. In regards to Mayor Flores' comment, I drove that aspect of 95 this morning. I'm so used to it, I didn't even realize it. But this probably was the shortest amount of time that it took me to get to downtown West Palm Beach today from Boynton Beach. So I don't know if I just made the lights and I just left at the right time. But I think that it's that cultural shift where we have to figure out what is the new normal. I was able to take the Tri-Rail during the pandemic, and they couldn't give away the seats. It was free and it was mostly empty. And I think that's kind of where we're going to have to figure out about mass transit. What is the correct and appropriate use of the government funding for it, whether it needs to be more effective and efficient Because do we need to only have 2 trains versus 3 trains or smaller buses on Palm Train? Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Just to kind of put it's interesting, the situation we've been living with now for, I don't know, 10 months, I guess it's been, with the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly impacted all of our viewpoints and thinking in terms of, what does the future hold? I would just like to offer a positive note on that, in that we will at some point in time be beyond this pandemic. And I don't want to use the term that we'll be back to normal, because things will be a little different, but the lifestyle would be more to what we were accustomed to, where we wouldn't have to walk around and be social distance and mask. I think we're beginning to get on that track now that vaccines are becoming available. It's just a matter of time before it gets through the population. So I do envision at some point, I certainly don't think this time next year we're going to still be in this situation. I would be really surprised if we are. With that said, I want us to keep in mind, remember the timelines that we have that are realities for any strategies or plans that we look to put in place. They're pretty long. So I just want to put that out there to say, let's not lose sight of the fact that we do have long-term timelines, and we should be looking to the future of leveraging technologies that may not be 100% available today, but will certainly be available as we move forward in time with the long timelines we have for getting the kind of projects done that we want to get done. So, but I thank all of you for your thoughts, and I think we're all thinking about the future, and we're going to hopefully be coming together with some strategies on that for the TPA. Okay, if there are no other comments from members on the board, I'd like to move forward and have Nick give us his report.
Good morning, members of the board. Thank you for that lively discussion already this morning. It was fantastic. In response to Mayor Flores, I have good news and bad news. Good news is that the section from Gateway to Lantana, the construction contract was awarded in June, and we expect to see the contractor out there doing the resurfacing work any day now. So that's already underway. We'll talk with DOT about prioritizing the section from Lantana North for the resurfacing work of that portion of I-95. But thank you for that feedback. We do like eyes in the field, recognizing where we have opportunities to make enhancements to our transportation system. Mr. Chair, I just want to remind the TPA board members assembled here and virtually that we do make available an opportunity for agenda review meetings prior to the conducting of the TPA board meeting on Thursdays. We have, I've actually blocked my calendar Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I'm happy to talk with any of you that want to go through the agenda in advance, just to make sure that we cover the nuances and the relative importance of items within your jurisdiction. And so I want to encourage board members to take advantage of that. Also want to remind our TPA board members that I do endeavor to meet with each of you individually every 6 months, just to talk more in detail about what's happening within your local jurisdictions and how the TPA can support what's happening on a regional scale and complement what's happening in your local areas. And again, I would encourage our TPA board members to take advantage of that. I've talked with a number of you about the second item. We have a Citizens Advisory Committee, and we are seeking additional nominations. We have currently 11 vacancies. After this morning's meeting, we'll have 9, but we are seeking nominations to fill those 9 remaining vacancies. If you are one of the TPA governing board members who has not nominated someone, I will be reaching out to you again, encouraging you to consider who you might nominate from within your community to represent a citizen's perspective on our transportation system. We really do value that committee and their perspective, their input, and we want to make sure that it is a fully, I guess we have full membership there. Number 3, I want to make sure that you are aware that we have provided access in the midst of this pandemic to the MPOAC orientation for elected officials in a virtual way. I've distributed information about this virtual platform to the TPA board members and their alternates, and I want to encourage you to consider if you would be willing to devote the time to watch these 5 self-paced webinars. It's really just 5 videos that we would be purchasing access to on your behalf. You would buy the access and we would reimburse you for that registration fee. And that would give you a better sense of the history and authority of a TPA board member and the role that we play in the transportation planning and funding process. And so we want to encourage all of you, if you're able to let me know that you would like to sign up or register for that. And again, we'll reimburse the registration fees associated with that, and that will give you a better sense of what you're commissioned to do when we gather here as a TPA governing board. Want to highlight, and hopefully we'll have some folks from the county also talk to this, but the county is hosting a mobility summit on January 14th, and registration is available. They gave us a longer hyperlink, so we shortened it on our website. So if you just go to palmbeachtpa.org/county mobility summit, all one word, County Mobility Summit, no spaces. You can register there, and that's going to be, again, January 14th. It's a virtual event. It will be from 8:30 in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're looking forward to collecting feedback from participants, not only presenting information to the group. So there'll be an opportunity for virtual comments and feedback to be provided. If we go to the next slide, the TPA is partnering, as we've done for the last several years now. We are partnering with the Broward MPO and the Miami-Dade TPO to conduct the annual Safe Streets Summit. That's going to be a virtual event this coming year. That's scheduled for January 28th and 29th. It's the afternoon of the 28th and all day on the 29th. Registration is free for TPA board members or their alternates, and we would encourage you to register at safestreetsummit.org. If you're interested in testing your knowledge on pedestrian bicycle safety, the Florida DOT is conducting a survey on your knowledge of ped bike safety and traffic laws relating to pedestrians and bicycles. And the link to that survey is also in the director's report. We'd love to see more of our members of our community test their knowledge and maybe even learn a little bit by going through the survey process. We also like to make TPA board members and your staff aware of various grant opportunities too that we're highlighting in the director's report this morning. Is high visibility enforcement funds for pedestrian and bicycle safety. The DOT has actually taken a portion of their federal safety dollars and made those dollars available to pay local law enforcement overtime to conduct additional positive reinforcement activities in high pedestrian and bicycle crash locations. Palm Beach County has several locations that are targeted for this funding, and we have encouraged local law enforcement agencies and their local governments to apply for these funds, and several of you have. I just want to make sure you're aware that this opportunity exists and you pursue it if that is of interest to you. And then the other item is the Safe Routes to School. DOT does provide a Safe Routes to School annual grant opportunity. Those applications are due at the end of the month. Again, those are federal dollars that are being made available to local governments to build Safe Routes to School projects. And then lastly, I want to highlight in the printed version of the director's report on the dais that we've distributed to you, we like to promote as many relevant transportation conference opportunities as we can. The TPA strategic plan does indeed prioritize your attendance or participation in those conferences, whether they be in person or virtual. And we do, because we see value in our board members becoming more informed on what's happening in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, we do reimburse the costs associated with attending these events. Our website has a number of them, and two that we've highlighted in the printed version of the report are future of transit-oriented development, a topic that we've talked about already this morning in a post-COVID-19 world. That's an upcoming webinar later this month. And then autonomous vehicles and public transport, a conference hosted by Autonomous Vehicles in America, AV America. That's again a virtual conference, and that's going to be in February of 2021. And there are other opportunities and conferences available on that website as well. Mr. Chair, I think that concludes my report this morning.
Okay, does anyone have a question for Nick on his report?
Mr. Chair, I do have, oh, never mind. I thought Mayor Grant had a comment. I do have Commissioner Weiss,
Okay.
but I also have that Mayor Shelley Petrolia joined us virtually. That was another one that I did not receive a response that she would be attending virtually for reasoning behind it.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve the attendance by Ms. Petrolia as virtually.
If there's no one who objecting to that, it'll be so moved then.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Just to add on, and really it's not a question, but there is the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has additional grant dollars for removing derelict vessels
Really?
available to counties and to cities. There's about $25,000. So if anybody has a proposal ready to go, they need to get in touch with them. I think it's on their, you can visit their website, but water is part of our transportation here.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on then to the agenda item 1G. This is the motion for accepting the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that a member on the board would like to have pulled for discussion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
All right, before I accept that, the first and second, Marge, do we have anyone remotely who wants public comment on the consent agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, is there anyone physically here who wants to comment on the public, from the public wants to comment on the consent agenda? If not, then we'll close public comment on the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. Do we have to take a roll call?
No, Mr. Chair, we can
Alright.
do
All in favor?
verbal.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. Marge, please let the record show that the consent agenda was accepted unanimously. Moving on to item 2A. This is a motion to elect the TPA chair and vice chair for the calendar year 2021. Do we have any public comments that have been previously submitted on this agenda item?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, do we have anyone here who wants to present a public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, then I will close public comment on this agenda item. And at this time, well, currently myself and Vice Mayor Weinworth are serving in those two positions. I'd like to certainly see us have a chance to do this for the rest of the 2021. What do you think? With that said, I'll open the floor for any nominations for chair, TPA. We have a caught up.
Yes, I have two cards, one by Councilmember Reed and the other by Commissioner Weiss.
Who was first? Ladies
Uh,
first.
Yes, it was Councilmember Reed.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Maria Marino on the basis that if she had not had to step down for her run for county commission, she would be the de facto president at the moment. And I feel the consistency would be helpful going forward.
Okay.
And I would like to go ahead and nominate Councilman Pinto for chair and Vice Mayor Weinroth for vice chair.
All right, so how do we do this in terms of the vote, March?
Chelsea, thank you for the nomination. And yes, I would love to continue on as chair of TPA that I had to sit out for a month because of elections and whatnot. I do know that Mayor Pinto and Vice Mayor Weinroth are excited to continue in their roles as chair and vice chair at the moment. And with me being a new commissioner, I think it would be appropriate if I not accept your, but I do appreciate it. And yes, in the future, I would love to be chair of TPA again, because I think we're doing good work.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And I have great faith in both of you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other nominations? This now, I'm opening it either for chair and as well as vice chair, since we have a motion made for both on the floor. Okay. Since
And
we
I
have-
don't have any hands raised virtually by any of the members.
So since there were no other nominations, we don't, what do we do?
Nope, we can do a vote verbally just to ratify it.
Okay, all in favor of the nomination for myself and Vice Mayor Weinroth to remain in our current positions?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. Please let the record show that it was a unanimous vote, and I am very pleased and thank you for your graciousness, Commissioner Marino. I think
We got a lot of other places to battle. This is
we
not
got
the one.
we've got a lot. I think we've got a tremendous amount of work in front of us as we move forward. I'm excited about it. I'm the kind of person I'm up for taking on new challenges and helping to, hopefully as a body we can move forward in the direction that where we're all pulling our oars the same way and we're really all on board for a strategy. I think that will move us very much forward. I think a strategy that ultimately 20 to 30 years from now, when they look back at us being here, they'll say, wait, they really did some smart things. They made some intelligent decisions that will take fruition and probably in 20 years to be real. Would you like to make any comments? Vice
No, I
Mayor?
was going to go on to the next item, 2B.
Okay, we're in item 2B. Item 2B is a motion to appoint representatives for the Southeast Florida Transportation Council. Nick, did you want to make comments on this?
I'm going to raise my hand. Now, what did I do?
Yeah, just, yeah, that would be.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Briefly, the SEFTEC, or the Southeast Florida Transportation Council, is a formal partnership between the Palm Beach TPA, the Broward MPO, and the Miami-Dade TPO. Each one of those governing boards designates one of their members to sit on a 3-member regional council. It's also supported by several staff committees, Technical Advisory Committee, Transportation Systems Management Committee, a modeling and forecasting committee. And it's a very important element of our formal partnership with the Southeast Florida region, because we together, the 3 counties, the 3 MPOs, represent over 30% of Florida's population. We are the largest urbanized area in Florida, and it allows, the partnership that we currently enjoy allows us to, as Mayor Pinto just mentioned, pull in the same direction. And so I don't want to downplay the significance of this organization. It's very strategic, it's very important, and we appreciate the partnership and look forward to the TPA's representatives participating actively in that discussion.
All right, is it my understanding correct that typically the chair of the MPA or TPA represent on this panel?
Sure, yes. Historically, the organization was formed in 2006, and for the first several years, the interlocal agreement actually mandated that the chairs of the 3 local MPOs were the representatives designated to participate in this capacity. That was modified several years after its inception to allow for any of the members, but traditionally it has been the chair that represents the entity in this regional discussion.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, I have no public comments on this item, but I did have Vice Mayor Weinroth followed by Commissioner Marino with their hands raised.
Okay.
I just think, in addition to the comments made by our executive director, unique to this body is the fact that it has to be unanimous vote for any action to be taken by SEFTEC. So no one county is left out of any decisions being made there. We had some conversation about this before, and I am going to, with the permission of the chair, make a motion to approve, or a motion to nominate the chair, Pinto, as our delegate, with Mayor Grant being the alternate delegate onto SEFTEC.
So you don't want to continue?
You know what, I am probably going to remain on MPOAC if
Okay.
that's the will of the board.
Okay.
And I think that Mayor Grant has definitely shown that he would like to take additional responsibilities. I think I'd be happy to allow him to take that seat.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. And before that, Commissioner Marino.
Well, I was going to ask you if this is something you were interested in doing. Do you want to be on
Oh,
SEFTEC?
I'm very interested in doing it, yes.
Okay, because I was going to say, if you didn't want to, I would be happy to continue in that role, and whoever as vice chair would be fine. But if you are interested in doing that, then
I'm very interested, but I think given the way this board had been structured, it's incumbent upon, I think, the chair to fulfill that role. So yes, thank you very much. I am definitely willing to do that, take that role. Go ahead.
With
Good
that,
set?
yeah, with that being said, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Marino as the vice chair. This is my last full year as an elected official. I'm term limited out, and so you are just starting your new terms, and so I'd like there to be the consistency. I think one of the things that when I first got to the MPO, now the TPA, that we didn't necessarily have the rotation of appointed chairs and vice chairs, and so I kind of want to make sure that we have that rotation. I believe that you were the alternate before,
I was the representative.
the representative, and
Yeah,
you
because she
did
was the chair. of.
Yeah, and
yeah.
so I kind of want to continue that, and so that we have that sort of ability for a lot of the other individuals here to have access to being in that chair position.
All right, is the role current alternate, or it's not a vice chair? What is it? It's alternate, right? That's what it says here.
Yeah, it's,
All right. Which means if the primary can't be present, the alternate is there to make sure we're
so,
represented.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
that's the
But
thing.
okay.
Do you plan on not attending, or?
I plan on attending everything.
Yeah, so.
That's fine.
I'll let.
You never know, things come up
Yeah,
sometimes that you
I'll
can't
let
control.
Commissioner Wein.
All right, so we have a modification to the nomination. You, instead of accepting the nomination for you to be alternate, you're nominating Commissioner Moreno.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
You willing
I'm
to
fine
accept?
with that. Sure.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Joe, I'll second.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. There are no other nominations on the floor. All in favor?
Mayor,
Aye.
I'm sorry, just to be clear for the record and for those attending virtually, I have yourself serving as the delegate with Commissioner Moreno serving as the alternate delegate.
That's correct.
Thank you.
We have to take the vote again? All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have no opposed. So Marge, please let the record show that that motion was approved unanimously. Look forward to it. Okay, moving on to item 2C. This is a motion to appoint representatives to the Florida MPAOC. And I think you were just commenting on that. If you want to give a brief on what the MPAOC is.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Florida MPOAC is a body of one elected official from each of the 27 MPOs within the state of Florida. So there's a 27-member governing board that meets quarterly. Typically, the in-person meetings have been in Orlando. We have been working through the ability to meet in a virtual capacity and have not secured that permission, even when the executive order was available for local governments. Because it's a statewide body, it didn't apply to the MPOAC. So the part and parcel with the willingness to serve in this capacity is a willingness to travel to Orlando once every 3 months. The meetings typically fall at the end of January, April, July, and October. So if you kind of think through your calendar and your ability to serve in that capacity, that's a relevant component of this position.
Okay. Would you like to comment? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be pleased to continue my representation of this body if it's so inclined to continue
Okay.
my service in that capacity.
I would certainly make that motion. And what I'd like to do is take a separate vote for the designee from the alternate, because as indicated by Mayor Grant, he's currently the alternate. I'm going to assume you take the same position. You would not want to be reappointed in that role.
Correct. This is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, are there any other nominations on the floor? If there are none, do we have any comments from the public remotely?
No, Mr. Chair, and I do have Commissioner Moreno. Is it on this one or for the alternate?
For the alternate.
Okay, so no comments on this one, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any comments from members that are presently here, physically here? Seeing none, then I'll close public comments on this nomination and ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If there's no opposed, please let the record show that the vote was unanimous, and Vice Mayor Ramworth will continue as our representative in that role. As for the alternate, you were.
Nick, could you just read who is qualified for this? I know it's attached, but I actually don't have it with me. So could you read who is qualified? Because you have had to have two.
The list of people who are qualified.
The list of people who are qualified. Sorry. You know what? I can't talk with a mask on and braces.
You can take it off when you talk.
With a mask and braces, it's really hard. So would you please, I know it's attached. I do not have it with me, but
It's
for
in the,
everybody
it's in
here,
the, yeah,
could
So
you
for
please
clarification-
read the list of people that are
qualified.
to
Right.
be either the chair or the vice chair or the, yes, how are we
Alternate.
qualifying it?
Mr. Chair, for clarification, the
UAC?
criteria to serve as an officer having attended some sort of a formal training and served in a certain duration only applies because of the TPA's adopted operating procedures to the officers of this body. So any one of our elected officials can serve as a CEFTEC delegate or as an MPOAC governing board member. There are no minimum qualifications. So any one of the 21 designated representatives for the TPA governing board can serve as an MPOAC rep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, and no comments from the public, right?
No, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none. I look for a nomination for alternate for the MPOAC.
Fine, I will. No one wants to do it, so I'll nominate
Stepping up?
myself.
You're
What the
gonna
heck?
Step up?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second for Commissioner Marino as the alternate. If there are no further comments or questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? We have no opposed. Please let the record show that Commissioner Marino was appointed unanimously. Okay. Thank you. Moving right on. Item 2D. Item 2D is a resolution approving amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 21-25 Transportation Improvement Program. I will ask everyone here to make a notation modification that got by us, that we should have made previously, but I noticed that we would have. And that is, it says here that the Transportation Improvement Program, that we're asking for an approval, but we're also, scratch out where it says directing FDOT. What it should say is we are requesting that FDOT conduct an annual call for safety projects. Everyone got that? If you have your, so it should not read directing, it should read, we are requesting FDOT to make this modification, address these issues. Anyone have a question with that? Is that okay? With that, sir, you are.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Euler, Deputy Director of the Program Development for the TPA. I'm going to go through just a few slides on what this amendment entails. So this is an amendment to our current fiscal year 2021 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program. Our Transportation Improvement Program is our 5-year program of federal and state transportation projects here in Palm Beach County. And this amendment entails 5 projects specifically that are being modified or added. And as the chair mentioned, in a backup, there's a resolution that goes through these amendments for approval and then also has an action for FDOT requesting, as he mentioned, about opening up for a process for federal highway safety program funds to be prioritized collaboratively with MPOs. So I'm going to go through these 5 projects page by page. And the first one we have is I-95 at Northlake Boulevard. And what you see on the screen is going to be the top section of this table is going to be the existing Transportation Improvement Program, so how it's currently displayed on our tip. And the bottom, it is the proposed amendment. So this first one is I-95 at Northlake Boulevard. And what this amendment does is incorporates an adjacent resurfacing work into this project. So you can note the additional length of the project. You're not going to see much changes to the actual cost. It's really the length change that creates an amendment for this. So it's going from 1.4 miles to 2.8 miles. The next project is US 1 over Erman River Bridge. And this is just, the location of this bridge is just north of Northlake Boulevard in North Palm Beach. And what this amendment is a right-of-way phase being added to the project. And so the purpose is to acquire private property for additional right-of-way for bridge construction and maintenance. And you can see the highlighted right-of-way phases there and the funding sources. The next project is a new project, and this is a safety project for intersection lighting retrofits at various intersections. And the purpose of this one is to improve intersection lighting by adding LED lighting to enhance pedestrian and vehicle safety. So the total product cost of this one is $2.68 million. I also wanted to draw attention to this one specifically as well, and this is related to our recommendation to FDOT. What you see as the funding source here, it says ACSS, and that's the second column on the screen. That funding source is one of the funding sources used by FDOT in anticipation to reimburse this project with federal highway safety program funds. The next product is US 1, Broadway Avenue from 45th Street to 59th Street. This is in the city of West Palm Beach limits, and this is to upgrade existing lighting with a focus on improving pedestrian and cyclist safety. Interesting to note on this product, this is one of the products that originated, this corridor originated out of the West Palm Beach Vision Zero action plan. They identified this corridor as a high crash location. And so they worked with FDOT to evaluate this corridor specifically and came up with needs along this corridor for upgrading pedestrian and cyclist safety. And so this is a result of that analysis with West Palm Beach and FDOT. Again, I wanted to note the source of this fund is also that ACSS, so that fund that is anticipated to be reimbursed with federal highway safety funds. And this is the last product in this amendment. This is FEC safety project from El Camino Real to Belvedere Road. So this is at railroad crossings at 14 locations to provide pavement markings, exit gates, and or signage. And so this is a joint funding from multiple partners. What this amendment entails is adding TPA prioritized federal surface transportation funds, which is our SU code. That's funds that we directly prioritize as the TPA. And it's adding $600,000 to support this project. Also on this project is a FRA Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Grant received by Brightline, totaling around $2.37 million. And there's also local contributions from multiple municipalities: West Palm Beach, Lake Worth Beach, Lantana, Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, and Boca Raton, totaling around $330,000. And then there's also a Brightline contribution of $192,000 in private funds. So those were the 5 products that are being amended up for discussion today and approval. And so what the resolution entails is approving the amendments that I just went through, and then also allows the director to sign off on the 5 FDOT request letters that were provided in the packet that address the amendments. And then this last one is, instead of the word direct here, we're saying requests to change that language in the resolution, but requests FDOT to conduct an annual call for safety projects. And this is related to those 2 products I showed before with the federal highway safety funds. So that is, federal highway safety funds is one of the federal programs from our previous federal act that goes towards safety. And the state gets around $120 million a year towards that program. And they currently implement that at a state level, working with their districts. And so what we are putting in our request to FDOT is to work more closely with the MPOs, specifically us in Palm Beach County, to come up with a way for us to collaborate with them on development of this list of priorities. And so the actions are in more detail there by providing what the estimate is for available funds, and then what kind of needs do we need to get on this list. And then most importantly, the funding is available for all federal age eligible roadways, which includes not just state roadways, but also some of our local and county roadways. And so in this request, we're also requesting for them to start using those funds collaboratively with the counties and the cities to also address their safety needs based on whatever prioritization we have with FDOT. That's all I have. Thank you.
There you go.
All right, let's try it again. There we go. Do we have any members from the public virtually who would like to comment on this agenda item?
I don't have any virtually, but I do have an in-person.
Okay. Well, all right, come
You
up, sir.
ready?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. John Podzerwinski with Florida Department of Transportation. I'm Planning Supervisor for the MPO Liaisons team. Thank you for allowing me the moment to speak here. I did want to speak for a moment with regard to the revision that you had offered, Mayor Pinto. That is exactly what I had registered to speak about. Thank you very much for making that change. And I do want to, I'm going to go off script a little bit here and just let you know that internally with DOT, we're committing to work together with the TPA. We're actually forming a team right now, and we're hoping to have a workshop. We're going to request that workshop. In fact, I'd like to notify by way of this meeting that we're requesting that workshop in the February-March timeframe to discuss exactly this, these safety funds and the prioritization of those safety funds, both on the state highway system and off the state highway system. So with that, I offer no objection, but I do offer support to the revision that you're making to the resolution. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And it was really an administrative oversight. There was no malice intent in that, but we did catch it this morning, and I'm glad you feel that we've addressed it appropriately.
Understood. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments from members of the public on this agenda item? I'm sorry.
No, Mr. Chair, but I do have members with their hands raised.
Here or remotely?
Yes, no, I have.
I'm sorry, okay.
Well, I have Koretsky, Brinkman, and then Marino.
Joni, I think you're first.
It's real kind of a comment and a question for future information. It's on the intersection improvements for the lighting, the new item. I see that, and I'm specifically speaking to the Forest Hill Boulevard section. If you could kind of let the municipalities in that area, which would be Lake Clark Shores, Palm Springs, Green Acres, how that's functioning, if it's going to start from the east at I-95 and work west, and in regards to the construction. And I did want to point out, when I got off of I-95 last night at Forest Hill, none of the streetlights were working until you got to Florida Mango. So I don't know if there's a problem with the streetlights or there's timing and doesn't realize it's dark out yet. But if FDOT could maybe take a look at that and let us know if we can at least get the lights that are existing functioning. Thanks.
Okay. Commissioner Marino.
Turn this on. Did you all miss me, by the way? I always have comments. I'm looking at the I-95 and North Lake Boulevard. Please, yes, we need to get this going, getting it done, and consolidating makes it so much more cost effective. And the bridge over the Ermine River, where is actually a little bit of a road diet there in North Palm Beach. And I know that's probably not a term we are calling it a road diet, right? We're going from 3 to 2, so.
A technical term?
I need my own diet from this COVID stuff. But anyway, the bridge is definitely in disrepair, and that whole area is very highly traveled. And we need, one of our duties is to make sure that people are safe when they're traveling. So I wholeheartedly will support this motion.
Okay. You were next, Jim?
I just wanted to get my memory refreshed. I don't think I can talk about this or vote on this topic without getting my memory refreshed on the safety lighting in the glades. Is that already addressed? Because my recollections, maybe it was still an open item, and I wanted to make sure I understand if there's something we could do here.
Well, let's Nick to comment on that.
Sure, and thank you for that question. That's a good one. So there were 3 issues outstanding on the State Road 80 street lighting. First, as background, State Road 80 street lighting, there was a warrant analysis done that came back negative, which means that the State Road 80 corridor is not eligible to use federal safety funds for the installation of the streetlights. I want to make that point clear because in these 2 locations that are on the agenda this morning, there is a positive warrant study for the enhancement of street lighting. And so that these corridors are eligible for federal safety funds. So the 3 issues we have to address with the State Road 80 street lighting are payment of construction, which the TPA, the board has directed me to fund the construction of those streetlights using funding that would normally be allocated to our local initiatives program. And we intend to present a work program, a draft work program, showing that funding to you in January. So we intend to have that addressed. Second is confirmation that the DOT will continue to provide reimbursement to the county at the consistent with its existing street lighting reimbursement ratio. They basically reimburse 90% of the cost of street lighting, and the local government with jurisdiction on that portion of the corridor is expected to pay the delta, the 10%. And the last item is confirmation that the county will accept a commitment to fund operations and maintenance, knowing that they'll be reimbursed for 90%, but they will have to come out of pocket for 10%. And on that last point, I just want to mention briefly to the TPA board, I have been working closely with county administration on a number of items. One of them is the closeout of the TPA's fund balance while we were hosted by Palm Beach County. County administration has agreed to release a portion of that fund balance to the TPA, and we have consented to allow them to retain the remainder of that fund balance in exchange for a commitment to fund the O&M for the State Road 80 streetlights. So we've allocated a portion of the TPA's fund balance. It was around $420,000, and we're letting them keep $300,000, $320, I guess, in exchange for their commitment to fund the State Road 80 O&M, and then they're going to release the remaining $100,000 to the TPA. And so we think we've solved all three issues. We have construction funding. We are working closely with DOT to secure their commitment to provide reimbursement funding, and we've secured the county's promise to pay the O&M costs associated with the State Road 80 streetlights. So we expect to have a very positive presentation for you in January.
And I appreciate that. I just never want to vote on anything again without on safety, look ahead, that I'm not asking, and we're not knowing that there isn't something else we should be adding to emphasize that, because thank you.
It was the most appropriate and valid question, because we've been kind of chasing this issue for several years, getting this lighting out at down State Road 80 in the Glades area. And I think what Nick has just indicated to you, looks like we're going to get that done. But it's an appropriate question to ask when we're talking about, funding for safety. And we know this has been an issue.
And I'm sure Mayor Wilson is very happy to be hearing this. If he's listening,
I hope he's
that
listening.
you have it.
Yes. Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, I have 2 members in person.
Go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. My only comment is that I'm encouraged by the comments from FDOT today about their willingness to look to spend some of this federal money on county and city roads as opposed to state roads, because it's sorely needed and appreciated. So I look forward to that workshop in the spring, because we can use those funds.
Absolutely. And who else was there?
Commissioner Lambert.
Lambert.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say how great it is to see these additions for public safety, specifically as it relates to the FEC and the railroads, and also the public-private partnership on that project. Great to see that. And I know this doesn't need to be stated, but just for the record, just want to say that I'll be a dissenting vote just due to the city's ongoing objection to the State Road 7 projects. But pleased to see these safety elements added in. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Weiss.
Yeah, and just in following up with Commissioner Lambert's comments, I was wondering if the body would entertain the opportunity to vote on all the projects except for the State Road 7 projects, and then bring those up separately and allow us to vote separately on those projects.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
If I may. Item 2D is only focusing on, it only pertains to an amendment to the 5-year TIP to modify 2 projects as highlighted in the presentation, and to add 3 projects, again, as highlighted in the presentation. Nothing about item 2D pertains to funding for the State Road 7 extension project. There's no component of this action that could be extracted, because there is no component of this action that pertains to the State Road 7 extension project. I spoke with the West Palm Beach delegate on the technical committee to clarify that point. There are actually 2 delegates from West Palm Beach on that committee. One of them understood and voted in support of the amendment. The other one voted in opposition without cause, in my opinion. But again, there is nothing related to funding for the State Road 7 extension in the content or actions requested in item 2D. There seems to be nothing to extract based on the request.
Okay,
from
thank you
Commissioner
for
Weiss.
clarification on that.
Okay. Still have another comment? Oh, okay.
So I feel like you made this clear, but I would just like to clarify again so that I understand. So this item on the agenda today is just to do with these additions and modifications, nothing to do with State Road 7 projects.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have, as well as Vice Mayor Weinroth, followed by Commissioner Paduzzi and then Mayor Grant.
I'm just going to ask for legal clarification because it was my understanding that a vote on this motion would be a ratification of the entire package as amended by this motion, not necessarily just approving the specific items that are before us. So to the point being made by two of our members feeling uncomfortable approving the entire tip with the State Road 7 project being part of it, I need legal clarification so that they are understanding what exactly their vote is. Is it ratifying the entire tip with the amendment, or is it just approving an amendment, but not necessarily approving the tip?
As I understand it, it's an amendment, which adds these, these projects that are listed in your agenda package and on the agenda.
All right, I will defer to your good judgment, but it seems to me that approving this amendment is approving a entire body of a tip
Actually,
with the amendment as part of it. So
no, actually, by definition, the whole notion of an amendment to an existing item or issue is just that. We're saying there's things that we're either adding or subtracting or modifying. It's not.
I'm not going to argue with our
No, I'm
legal
just saying, but
counsel.
it clearly, well, legal counsel has indicated is an amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 21-25 transportation improvement program. And then it lists the content of what the amendment is. And those are the items that were presented to us. That here's what we are asking to approve as an addition or an amendment or adjustment, whatever term you want to use, to something that exists already.
Yeah, I think the chair's understanding is correct.
So, okay? Okay.
Mayor, I have Commissioner Paduzzi,
Paduzzi,
followed
you're
by
next.
Mayor Grant, and then Commissioner Marino.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with Vice Mayor Weinroth that a vote, for this right now could be construed as a subsequent ratification of the entire tip, because an amendment to the whole would be considered a ratification of the whole. So I respectfully disagree with the council for the TPA, and I think in an abundance of caution, I will be voting against, even though I believe there's some good projects in here. I don't want it to be construed, some other way.
So noted. I think you were next, sir.
No, Mayor Grant,
I'm sorry,
Marino,
Mayor
and
Grant.
Napoleon. No.
Okay. I think my question is this a staff initiated amendment to the tip? I believe January or February this year, we stated that no board members can just amend the tip at any time. And so that was my question. And do we create any protocols to prevent certain motions to the tip at any time?
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
So in response to that procedural question, we adopted an update to our public participation plan that constrains the ability of individual board members at the adoption hearing for the entire TIP document, the annual update for the adoption of that entire TIP document. The board is constrained to only voting that document up or down and not making amendments from the floor at that last point in time. That was the only constraint that we introduced. amendments to the tip and amendments to the long-range plan can be requested by board members, they can be requested by TPA staff, or they can be initiated, as is the case in this particular amendment, by the Florida Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I could respond briefly, just with one more piece of information. One of the two items that are new projects in this 5-year TIP is a street lighting project on Broadway, US 1 in the city of West Palm Beach. And I wanted to make sure that the TPA board as a whole and all of its members understand that that project was requested by the city of West Palm Beach as part of its Vision Zero efforts. And the DOT, in response to the city's request, identified a need to enhance street lighting in the city of West Palm Beach on the Broadway corridor. And so I just want to make sure that all of the governing board members are aware that that is the purpose of this amendment, to allocate funds in response to a city of West Palm Beach request for a Vision Zero safety initiative to enhance street lighting within the city. I thought that was important to make sure the full board understood.
Thank you for the information.
Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion in response to concerns that this may also act as an approval of the State Road 7 extension project. Perhaps putting some, the board might want to consider putting some language in the resolution that it shall not be construed as being an approval of the State Road 7 extension.
If that's what you're recommending as legal counsel.
Well, it's comfort language.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, all right, well, that's on the table. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, if I can go in order of how the tent cards are raised, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. So I have Commissioner Marino next.
Okay.
Just a little bit of history. We have amended the tip over the years, and it's just an amendment. We've done it, I'm going to guess, Paul, you and I had this discussion earlier, 10 or 11 times that we've amended the tip. And it has happened because things have changed. I mean, what we're talking about with I-95 is just lengthening a project that's already included in the tip. So this is just an amendment. It is not anything other than amending the tip right now. Am I correct in that assumption?
I think you are, yes.
Thank you.
I have Vice Mayor Napoleon.
Vice Mayor?
My only comment was that in reading the resolution more carefully again this morning, section 2 says we're approving amendment 1. We should be approving amendment 2. There's a typo in the resolution.
It's a good catch.
And I think this is an amendment. This is not a re-ratification of the entire tip. So I don't think we need to start carving up pieces every time we vote on something for the tip to specifically carve out State Road 7. I mean, this includes stuff West Palm Beach asked for. It's kind of strange to vote against this because it might re-ratify something they voted against before. I don't think this does that at all.
The whole concept of creating the terminology amendment says just that. It's just a modification, and you have to state specifically what those modifications are in terms of it being an amendment, and then act on that request specifically. Who is next?
I have Mayor Flores.
Mayor Flores?
First of all, I think these are safety measures that I think are needed. So I'm definitely in favor. I actually want to make a motion. However, I want to defer to Commissioner Perdusi to create the language, how we want to make this motion go forward. So I'll definitely want to put the motion forward. However, I want to defer to Commissioner Perdusi so that he can feel more comfortable with the language.
So I have Vice Mayor Weinroth, followed by Commissioner Peduzzi.
All right. We'll come back to you for your motion, okay?
I think we're going down a rabbit hole here. We have a problem. We have created a process in deference to the good city of West Palm Beach so that they feel comfortable with this tip, and so that we don't make amendments to it, so that we don't wind up with the problem that we're still trying to deal with legally. And I think if we now allow an amendment of this amendment, we are working against the spirit of the original reason why we said we could not amend from the floor the tip. If we allow this amendment, there is no reason why an amendment would not be in order by one of our representatives, West Palm Beach, to say, let's drop State Road 7. And if there was a second, which I'm sure we could get, we would be back in the same discussion we've had many times before. This cannot be amended here today. So I urge this body not to adopt any amendments to this motion to adopt, to vote it up or down. And if there is some concern about whether this has any potential of ratifying the tip in total, which again, I'm not going to debate it with our counsel. I will defer to his good judgment. But any amendment of this motion is going to take us right back where we started when we had the problem with the tip before. Thank you.
And we're not going to go there. I can tell you that. Who's next?
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Peduzzi.
Well, I'll now respectfully disagree with Vice Mayor Weinroth and agree with counsel for the TPA. I mean, we're not revisiting the whole State Road 7 issue necessarily by us objecting just to that portion with regard to this amendment. I mean, I just think that we'd be more comfortable, and there's a number of us in this room that would be more comfortable voting on this if we didn't feel like we're, somehow ratifying the whole by including an amendment. And this puts us in a bad position because there are some really good projects here, as Chair mentioned, or as our Executive Director mentioned, some that even pertain to safety measures for the city of West Palm Beach that we certainly are in support of. So I would just respectfully ask that if there is a way, as the General Counsel outlined, to just note in there that this is not by a voting yes, it's not our ratification of the whole, just of this particular amendment to the whole.
Commissioner Lambert has her hand raised.
Thank you. Respectfully appreciate the advice of counsel here, but and I am in complete agreement with the amendments that are proposed, but based on the counsel of our city and the resolution that we have passed against State Road 7, I do, out of an abundance of caution, need to dissent on this vote. But thank you so much for considering the safety policies and the amendments here that specifically benefit West Palm Beach residents.
Okay. Any Commissioner Marino?
We need to move on from this. And it doesn't matter what we do, West Palm Beach is going to descend anyway. So I think we just need to move on. This is an amendment. It is an amendment. Let me repeat myself. It is an amendment. We need to vote on this as an amendment, as we have in years past. Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
What was your motion, to approve the amendment?
Correct.
As stated. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
All right. You know the second?
Yes.
All right.
This
Do we have
does
to take a roll call?
Yes, sir.
Please do the
So
roll call.
just to clarify for everyone present virtually and in person, the motion on the floor is to adopt a resolution approving amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 21-25 Transportation Improvement Program and requesting FDOT to conduct an annual call for safety projects. Before I call the roll, virtual members, if you can please unmute your microphone, and then a reminder for in-person members, if you can unmute on your side as well. So please respond by either saying yes or no when I call your name. Joseph Anderson is absent. Joni Brinkman,
Yes.
Joel Flores,
Yes.
Stephen Grant,
Yes.
Jim Koretsky,
Yes.
Douglas Lawson is still absent. Maria Marino,
Yes.
Mac Bernard,
Yes.
Michael Napoleon,
Yes.
Christina Lambert,
No.
Joseph Paduzzi,
No, due solely to the inclusion of State Road 7 in the tip and 5-year plan.
Shelley Petrolia, Fred Pinto,
Yes.
Chelsea Reed,
Yes.
Maria Sachs is absent, Scott Singer,
Yes.
Andy Thompson,
Yes.
Pam Triolo is absent, Robert Weinroth,
Yes.
Greg Weiss,
No, based on the inclusion of State Road 7 in the 5-year plan.
Steve Wilson is absent. And just to go back, Mayor Petrolio, I did not hear your vote. Can you please repeat?
Yes, do you hear me?
Thank you. It passes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let the record show, and let's move on to the next agenda item, which is item 3A, which is information items, Palm Beach County Airports. We have an update.
Oh,
Good morning. My name is Laura Beebe. I'm the Director of the Department of Airports. I'm here to give you a brief overview of the current situation at the Palm Beach International Airport and also talk about some impacts to our capital improvement program. Where do I need to point? Okay. For those of you that are not familiar with our airport system, Palm Beach County owns and operates 4 airports, including the Palm Beach International Airport. We own 3 general aviation airports: North Palm Beach County General Aviation Airport, Palm Beach County Park Airport in Lantana, the Palm Beach County Glades Airport. Policy is established by the Board of County Commissioners. We operate as an enterprise fund with no ad valorem tax support, which means we are funded solely by the airlines, businesses, and our passengers. Construction is funded primarily by federal and state grants, passenger facility charges, which are a $4.50 charge on every airline ticket, revenue bonds, and airport revenues. I keep going. You're gonna have to. Which way is the next slide? That one? Okay, thank you. So when I started in this position in January 2019, this is what it looked like. We were at all-time highs, 37 destinations, 12 airlines, 109 daily departures, and more than 7 million passengers. By February, we were close to 7 million passengers, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit. We began to experience severe declines in passenger traffic in March. The recovery period started May and June, and then we bottomed out, or after bottoming out in April. So in April, we were actually down 97% in total passengers. Our actual load on aircraft was about 13%, which means the planes were only 13% full. We started to see some recovery in July, but due to the surge in the COVID-19 cases and the quarantine orders, passenger traffic began to slow again. We've had a significant reductions in capacity and the number of nonstop destinations. The good news is we are starting to see those destinations return, but at reduced capacity, meaning where we may have had multiple daily flights to a destination, we may have 1 daily flight, or we may only have twice weekly flights. We're not expecting full recovery to 2019 levels until 2023 or 2024. So this is a pretty good graphical representation of where we were and where we currently are. So this is in terms of capacity and flights. Capacity are the number of seats that we have in the market, and flights, obviously, the number of aircraft. And as I'd mentioned, we were at 109 daily departures. As of December, we're about an average of 55 daily flights. So why were we hit so hard? The most significant declines were in the northeastern United States. During season, which is our period from November through March, we have an average of 42 flights daily alone to the New York area. So you can see that the New York area was hit very hard as a result of the pandemic, which has impacted our operations. COVID-19 impacts on airports include a $23 billion loss in revenues. Revenue streams that are dependent on passenger activity, like concessions, meaning the restaurants and retails, shops in the airport, parking, and variable airline fees and charges such as landing fees. Airlines, concessionaires, and rental car companies have all sought financial relief from airports in the form of fee and rental waivers and deferrals. Our 2020-2021 revenue losses are anticipated to be substantial. Parking alone, we're losing about $1 million per month. Measures taken to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Very early on, we realized that we need to separate our staff. All of our operations officers are located in one office area. We're required by law to do a certain number of daily inspections, to respond to certain door alarms, and do certain activities every single day. Our fear was that if one of our operations officers got sick, it would put the entire office out. So we've had to segregate our staff. We segregated our communication center. Half of our communication center now is no longer in the communication center. We've relocated them to one of our conference rooms. We've also delayed and reprioritized capital projects. We're now focusing primarily on safety, security, and preservation of assets. We actually reduced our capital budget by about $10 million in 2020 or 2021. We're also temporarily closing or have temporarily closed underutilized facilities until the demand returns, such as portions of the long-term parking garage, the economy parking lot, Concourse A, restaurants and shops. The good news is we are starting to see some people return. So we have opened up some of the facilities that have been closed. You probably saw the latest announcement, our passenger lounge, the Escape Lounge, has just reopened. So that is a good sign. We have suspended economy parking lots shuttle service to the terminal. It's walking only, just due to the lack of demand, and it is a very expensive operation to run that shuttle service. And we've also delayed filling vacant positions. So this gives you an idea of our revenue sources. And you can see parking is one of our largest revenue streams. And as I mentioned, we're losing about $1 million per month in parking alone. Car rental, second largest revenue, non-airline revenue stream. They took a major hit in the very beginning of the pandemic. If you drove by the airport, you probably saw thousands of cars parked at the airport. They were not people parking at the airport, they were rental cars. We were storing rental cars everywhere. We had them on vacant properties, we had them in our parking garages. The good news is the rental car companies paid us for that privilege since we didn't have other parking. Other concessions that have been impacted, like I mentioned, the restaurants, ground transportation, retail shops, our passenger facility charges have actually been impacted quite a bit as well, because that is that per ticket charged by the airlines, which is remitted to the airport. So very early on, we realized we needed to establish some safety measures for the safety of our employees as well as the passengers. Very early on, we installed transmission barriers at the ticket counters and the gates. We've enhanced our cleaning and disinfection, including focusing on high-touch surfaces. Anytime that you come to PBI now, you can literally see somebody wiping the handrails on the escalators all day long. As people are leaving the hold room areas, we have staff that are going out and they're wiping down all of the armrests. So we are constantly cleaning. We've also implemented new measures where we're closing the terminal after the last flight every night so that we can do more thorough cleaning. And we've also implemented electrostatic spraying. We have a lot of safety messaging throughout the airport, signage, overhead announcements, social media. We're also spending a lot of time educating individuals on the mandatory mask order. We actually provide free masks to anybody who do not have a mask when they come to the airport. We're getting ready to also install touchless vending machines where you can just swipe your hand across it and it will give you a mask so that our employees don't have to have interaction when they're providing those masks. So we expect that probably within the next month or so, and they will be, again, at no cost to the customers. We're also conducting daily employee health screenings in accordance with county policy. And we were the first airport in Florida to get a Global Biorisk Advisory Council Star accreditation. That is basically an industrial cleaning certification focused on things such as contagious diseases. So our current and future terminal projects, as I'd mentioned, we had done a very large reduction to our overall capital plan. Right now, our primary focus really is on the preservation of our facilities. We are doing terminal roof improvements, which are desperately needed. We have a 30-year-old building, and many of the systems are in need of replacement. We're doing a terminal condensation mitigation project. The outdoor condensation or humidity from the outside of the building was intruding into the building, which was literally causing it to rain inside the terminal. So that project is one of our high priority projects. We're replacing all of the escalators starting this year throughout the airport, 14 escalators. We're in the process of replacing our PA system, which is 30 years old. We're also doing HVAC and terminal chiller improvements. So we really are focusing on those building systems right now. We're continuing to do airport pavement and rehabilitation and construction. Airports, we do pavement all day long, every day. We finish one area, we start another, and then we go back and we start at the area that we started with. The other project that we're working on is a Concourse B expansion. So Concourse B is a 2-level structure that was built in 1986 with 13 gates. Airlines have increased the size of the aircraft. Seat capacity has increased by approximately 47% from 2014 to 2018. So we have exceeded our hold room capacity, and we've strained our circulation areas. And due to the lack of concession space, we've actually eaten some of our hold room space up with concession opportunities. So our seating capacity is really strained. As a result of our master plan, we determined that 6 of our hold rooms meet the current design seat capacity of 150 seats. 7 are deficient due to gate locations and physical constraints. Again, as I mentioned, we have insufficient concession space, lack of back of house activities such as kitchens and storage. So if you've been on Concourse B, you've probably seen their very limited restaurant options. You could do Burger King, you could do Starbucks, you can do pizza. That's about it. And the reason that is there's no back house space. There's no kitchen space where the restaurants can actually prepare meals. We also have insufficient restroom facilities. And we do anticipate the return of the passenger traffic, like I'd mentioned, to be about 2024, which dovetails with the completion of this project. It's supported by the airlines, the FAA, and FDOT. So this is essentially what it'll look like. You can see we have a couple of concession bump outs and a major expansion to the end of the concourse, which is very similar to the expansion that was done to Concourse C. So there'll be approximately 56,000 square feet of expansion space, 2 new gates, new concession bump outs, concrete apron work, possible sterile corridor for international operations at gates B2 and B4. We currently have 1 international gate, so this would give us the capacity of having a 2nd international gate. And we would also need to extend the existing building systems. So some of the general aviation airport projects that we're working on, a Part 150 noise compatibility study at the Palm Beach County Park Airport. So that's essentially a study of how aircraft impact surrounding communities. We have received over the years many complaints about aircraft activities around the Lantana Airport, primarily due to helicopter traffic and training activities. The reality is the airports have very limited things that they can do as far as aircraft activities in flight. So one of the things the FAA has recommended to us to do is a Part 150 noise compatibility study, which is, we're in the middle of doing that right now. We've also are working on an environmental assessment for the extension of runway 1432, which is the crosswind runway at the North County Airport, which will expand the runway from 4,300 feet to 6,000 feet, which will allow for a longer wingspan and approach speed. We don't anticipate this to result in changes to airspace or routes into or out of the airport. The airport is designated as a reliever airport. However, changing environmental conditions result in operational restrictions for certain kinds of jet aircraft. Requirements for aircraft vary based on conditions. Hot and wet conditions require longer runway length to accommodate the same aircraft safely. So in order to take off, an aircraft may be required to reduce loads such as fuel, which impacts stage length, which means how far they can fly before they have to stop and get fuel. This was a process that was desired by the business community and will insist in ensuring that the airport serves its defined role in the county's airport system. We also have multiple airfield rehabilitation projects at the general aviation airports, including runway rehab projects, apron rehab, completion of a fuel farm and wash rack at Lantana, multiple security improvements at the Lantana airport. So those are continuous and ongoing. So to end, I want to brag a little bit about our airport. We were recently voted the 9th best airport in the United States in Travel and Leisure's 2020 World's Best Awards. We were also voted the 2nd best medium-sized airport in the Passenger Satisfaction J.D. Power survey for 2020. And we were also named the 3rd best airport in the United States by Condé Nast Readers' Choice Awards. So notwithstanding the fact that this has been a very, very difficult year, our customers have said to us that they love our airport, which means a lot, particularly in this year. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Before we take questions or comments from members of the board, we'd like to find out, do we have any public comments from virtual
No, Mr. Chair, I
participants?
have no virtual or in-person comments.
Or in-person comments? Okay, then I'm going to close public comment to this agenda item and open it up for questions or comments from the board. I think
I have,
Commissioner Weiss was first.
no, Weinroth, Weiss, and then Reed.
All right. You're on.
Ms. Beebe, it's always great to see you.
Good to see you too.
2 questions. First, of course, the elephant in the room. What are we doing about COVID testing at the airport?
So we have issued a request for proposals this past month for a COVID testing center at the airport. So the minimum required service will be COVID testing services required for travel. It will enable, it's a passenger convenience. You can get tested all over the county, but it will enable our passengers to, if they'd like to, get tested at the airport prior to travel if it's required for their travel to their destination or recommended.
Is that PCR or rapid test?
It would be both.
Okay. Now let's talk about what we talk about here a lot, connectivity. Can you tell me a little bit about the connectivity between the airport, Brightline, Tri-Rail, and Palm-Tran?
Primarily bus, Uber, Lyft, and traditional ground transportation.
Do we have any plans for better connectivity to Brightline once that starts to be reestablished?
Not at this time, but I mean, it's certainly something that we would be willing to look at.
And, you know, as you heard when you were sitting here listening to us before, first mile, last mile is certainly key to everything we're talking about in public transportation. And that is key to getting people off of Tri-Rail and Brightline. And, you know, when you go down to Fort Lauderdale, you go to Miami-Dade, there's a nice clean way of getting from public transportation to the airport. We need to develop that ability for our stakeholders.
I don't disagree that additional connections are a good thing for the airport. The good news is we are conveniently located near the downtown area, so it is pretty easy and convenient for our customers to get to where they want to go currently, but anything we can do to streamline that is definitely a positive.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Beebe.
Commissioner Weiss was next.
Thank you. Good to see you, and thank you for the excellent presentation and the work you're doing during these challenging times. You know, somebody who's been around the airport for a long time, I always like to remind people it's a general aviation airport that has commercial traffic.
That's a good point.
The vast majority of the operations of flights coming in and out of PBIA are general aviation operations. And I thought it was interesting and was hoping you can share with this board, because I had written to you and asked about what the impacts were, and I think they'll be interested to find out, you know, the impact to, as you've talked about, our commercial activity, but the general aviation activity there.
So for those of you that don't know, general aviation activity is private aircraft activity. Palm Beach is very, very private, very, very popular with private aircraft, particularly large corporate jets. At the very beginning of the pandemic, they were hit pretty hard. However, they recovered very quickly, which is very similar to what happened after 9/11. Currently, they're doing very well at Palm Beach. All of our general aviation airports are actually doing just fine during this situation because people are more comfortable flying, on the private jets with people that they know. Commercial service, you're in a plane with a lot of people that you don't know. So obviously people, in the month of June, people were desperate to get charter flights to go back to different areas. So if you look at our statistics, in June, they were actually up 29% at Palm Beach. And that's because people were looking to fly privately. We about 60% of our traffic is general aviation at Palm Beach. It is good because it diversifies our revenue stream. So although we are a commercial service airport, we are supported as well by general aviation. Cargo is also doing very well right now. As you know, we're all ordering things on Amazon and FedEx. And so cargo is doing just fine. General aviation is doing just fine. Our off-airport development is doing fine. So although the situation is pretty dire, we do have some bright spots. When we started this, we had very healthy reserves. We have a diversified revenue stream. We did receive $37 million in CARES Act funding. All of those things are helping us very much. I'm not saying that this isn't catastrophic to the airport and airline industry because it absolutely is.
And thank you. And then do you have any knowledge or understanding, as the vaccines begin to roll out, and as we get, because I had heard about the potential of the airlines then going to require that people prove they had been vaccinated in order to get on a commercial flight.
I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, even at our aviation, committee meetings. I don't know that that's necessarily something that's coming down the pike immediately for domestic. I think there's a lot more chatter about it internationally. I believe IATA, one of the biggest airline groups, has had quite a bit of discussion about that for international travel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Just on that particular point, because this is a very valid point that was brought up. Is there any particular position that you think the airlines will take on this? Is this something that they would push forward to do, or something they would be reluctant to do?
That's really hard. In the very beginning, I think they were reluctant to push masks. Now they've taken a very hard line on that.
Yeah.
They even mandate that you wear a mask in the airport. So people are denied service for that. I think that they are looking for ways to have people become confident in traveling again. As long as people feel unsafe traveling, we're going to continue to have the same problem. So I can see them strongly encouraging it to begin with. It's entirely possible at some point it may be mandated even at the federal level.
Well, to your point, I think it's critical to the entire travel industry for people to gain confidence again that it's a safe, there's a level of safety there for them. But to your point as well, Commissioner Weiss, I think this is an issue that we will see emerge on a national level about how the vaccine is being rolled out and how you begin to segment the population to say those who have it, may get certain opportunities to do things, whereas those who haven't had it yet may be limited, but stay tuned. I think this is going to be an evolving issue as we're in the vaccine zone now, as we move through this zone of this component of the pandemic. Were there any other board members?
I have Councilmember Reed, followed by Commissioner Marino.
Mine will be brief. It's not a question, it's a statement, which is thank you. I was on a call with you at the chamber back in April, and everything was hitting the fan at the moment. You didn't know what was going to go on, and to hear a report like this where you've done such a great job diversifying, had the CARES Act, you kept us informed the entire time. So I just want to take a moment to thank you for your leadership. I know
Thank
it's not
you.
easy.
I really appreciate that.
Commissioner Marino?
Mine is just a comment also or an observation, and it was something that came up earlier. FDOT has been able to do projects more efficiently and quickly because there's less traffic on the road. So I'm guessing that the airport even though they set aside a certain amount of money for the infrastructure improvements, actually because of the velocity of, the time that you can get these done, maybe there might be a little bit of savings in those dollars that you put aside because you can get it done quickly?
That's absolutely correct. Our condensation project, we are actually reducing the number of phases because there are fewer passengers in the terminal. This will require us to put scaffolding throughout the entire middle, second level of the terminal. It's very disruptive to passenger traffic. So now is the time
Now's
to
the
get that
time to
work
do it.
done.
Yeah.
The project with the elevators and escalators also is a major inconvenience to passengers. So we've expedited that project as well. The one downside is we did completely work our capital program for fiscal year 2021. However, we did receive some notice from DOT that they were reducing dollars because of the impacts to their funding sources. So we are keeping our core projects. They were very, very supportive of the Concourse B project. That project has stayed in. We have funding from, the federal government, the state government, and the airlines have approved PFC funding for that as well. So that project is going to continue moving forward. Now's the right time to do the project because, once the terminal is packed, it's going to be harder and harder to get those things done. We don't shut down for a day when we do these projects. We just work around the people and the airlines, sometimes in the middle of the night. I'll give you an example. We have to do a project on our runways. We literally are doing it in the middle of the night from 10:30 at night until 5:30 in the morning. So that means that, nobody really notices anything going on, but it is very disruptive to us.
Any other comments? But if not, I'd like to thank you so much for your presentation. Please come back and keep us apprised. You've got some real work on your hands. And are you going to make it to 2023, 2024? You said you won't get back to equilibrium until that
About
timeline?
2023 or 2024. The good news is, even though we had a reduction very early on to, the number of destinations, all of the airlines have stayed with the exception of one, and that was Silver Airlines. They had very minimal service at the airport, so that's little to no impact to us. It's unfortunate that we don't have that service anymore, but all of the other airlines have stayed, including one that had just started prior to the pandemic, Allegiant. So we're starting to see those destinations return. We do see some appetite for Palm Beach. During the middle of the pandemic, JetBlue's added LAX service. They're struggling with LAX service right now because of the situation in Los Angeles, but they are very committed to the route. They said, although there may be some disruptions in the frequency, they are very committed to it and want to continue with that. We just received notice last week that we will be receiving Nashville service on Southwest. So,
wow,
that's a completely new route. It'll be starting in March. It's only for a month. It's a test. If people fly it, we may be keeping it. So that's the good news. So airlines, right now they're really testing markets to try to find out what will stick. And for us, New York has been a problem. When you typically have 42 flights a day during season to the New York area. And now it's much less than that. So, but the good news is I think the airlines are very committed to our airport and they do see the value of providing service from there. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 3B is an update, believe it or not, on State Road 7 extension. Now we're going to have this is going to be provided by an FDOT representative virtually. So we get them plugged in. It is virtual, right? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yes, I am here. It is virtual. I'm just trying to figure out how to take control of the screen. Which I apologize for this delay. But I can't control the presentation. Oh, here we go. Yes, okay. Here we go. My name is Scott Peterson. I'm with the Department of Transportation. And the reason I'm here before you today is, as you all probably recall well, in 2018, this project was let to construction, although it actually began construction due to some concerns and legal challenges raised by the city. So the department has spent the last year plus refining the design and trying to alleviate some of those concerns. And I'm back before you today to discuss what those changes are and how they've affected both the design and the cost. So as you can see from the map, the location or the alignment have not changed. It's split into two different project numbers, but that should be invisible to the public. That's strictly a DOT accounting thing. It is being designed and permitted and hopefully constructed as one project. So the summary of the changes, you can see a lot of these changes, you can read them for themselves, with reducing the footprint of the road, reducing the environmental impact. We did eliminate the outfalls to the Ibis Lake system, which was a concern that was raised. The retaining walls minimized footprint. Minimizing piling in the water of spillway is obviously an environmental improvement. Eliminating swales to reduce footprint again. And one thing which was not known to us at the time in 2018, but had to be addressed was FEMA have updated their flood maps and we had to address the changes in those. So I'll just give you a minute to look at that, but I will be discussing some of these things in more detail on further slides. So I want to show you the before and afters. So back in 2018, from the roundabout at 60th, the east-west portion before it crosses the M Canal looked like this. And I'll show you what hasn't changed. It's 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction. And this is the updated one. You'll still, now forgive me because the perspective and the scale of the drawings are a little bit different. So it's hard to match them exactly, but you'll still notice 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction with a divided median and a canal, the M Canal on the left. What's different is really on the right side you see this dry swale on the right side of the screen. I don't know if you all can see my pointer moving.
Yeah, we can see the pointer.
Okay. In this area, you'll notice that swale is gone. And that was, again, to reduce the footprint of the project. And another thing you'll notice in this picture is all these people walking on our shared use path, which in the previous incarnation, there was a sidewalk on each side. So it's actually less of a footprint to provide a shared use path than it is 2 sidewalks. So those are the 2 big changes here. The sidewalks went to a shared use path and the dry swale was eliminated. Now, north of the M Canal, similarly, the 2 sidewalks were replaced with a shared use path, which is black in this picture, which is here. And you see on the right side, we had a dry swale and then a restored natural area, which we're going to do some mitigation on our own property. The dry swale is still there. Although it looks like it's at a different scale, it's actually approximately the same size. But what was added was a wet conveyance channel. One of the ways we were able to eliminate the outfall to Ibis was to retain, or not retain, but at least detain a lot of the water here on site before it ultimately drains to the north. And there still is a portion of the DOT right-of-way which will be used for on-site mitigation. And similarly, the bridge has changed. The overall footprint of the bridge changed. You can see it was 97 feet, 6 inches in this picture. And the text is a little small to read here, but it went down to 84 feet. And the big change you'll notice is 2 sidewalks, a 22-foot median, went to 1 shared use path and a smaller median. So again, trying to reduce the footprint of the project. So this, we gave a presentation to the board. Gosh, it was just before quarantine. And this is the same slide. I wanted to emphasize that the right-of-way impacts have not changed. All work is being done within right-of-way, except for minor work. The water catchment area is outside of our limits of construction. And we still are using remaining FDOT right-of-way to serve as a buffer between State Road 7 and the water catchment area. So none of that was affected by any of these changes we've made over the last year. So how has that affected construction? So on the southern portion, you can see the updated cost went to 23.2 million. And on the northern portion, the cost increased from 50 to 56. Some of that was due to the FEMA maps changing and us having to react to that to provide floodplain compensation. Some of that is due to unit prices. Just as years go by, unit prices tend to increase, asphalt. Some of it is due to the fact that we had to add walls to reduce the footprint. So in exchange for a little bit of extra money, we I think have improved the actual environmental impact of the project. And finally, where we're at in the process, in September, we did submit an updated package to South Florida Water Management District. We expect to submit to the Army Corps of Engineers shortly, probably next month. And we are on track to complete the plans in May with a letting in September of 21.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we take questions from members on the board, are there any public comments out there virtually who would like to comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, do we have anyone present who wants to make a public comment? Seeing none? We have none? All right, seeing none, then I'm going to close public comment to this agenda information item. Open up for comments from members of the board. Any questions, comments? No? Since there are none, then I'd like to thank you for your presentation, sir, and keep us posted as you move along. I just would like to, it seems to me that there was an attempt made by FDOT to address some of the many concerns, environmental concerns in particular, that were raised by West Palm Beach. And it looks like you went back to the drawing boards to try to address those issues. I hope as you begin, the representatives for West Palm Beach review these updates, hope you will find them. It's a much better project in terms of addressing your concerns than it was before. So I'd like to make that observation. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item C, which is also going to be a virtual update for the Florida East Coast Railway passenger service. Jessica, are you out there?
Yes, Chairman. Can you hear me and see my presentation?
We can hear you. We can see your presentation.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. Again, I am Jessica Jocelyn, and I am your consultant for the next few years. I had the privilege of being selected to do the research on the Florida East Coast Railway passenger rail service update that you all requested, I believe, just a couple months ago. There's, a lot of confusion or not clarity on what's occurring throughout the FEC corridor from Treasure Coast to Miami-Dade. So I'm hoping through this research that we'll be able to provide some clarity to what you've heard over the past years now. So this is the overall summary of our findings. There are actually 19 stations that we researched and 3 connections between the CSX line and the FEC line that we researched. You'll see here that we categorized it in 3 different ways. So the first are the existing stations that we're all very aware of, 1 in each county from Palm Beach to Miami-Dade. We also thought it was very important in this summary to note the double tracking and quiet zones that have gone in place, and also the ones that are underway. There's been about $1 billion spent on Brightline's side, and of course, several million on your all's side in making that happen. In terms of the agreed to and underway, there are 3 stations, again, 1 per county, Palm Beach to Miami-Dade. And here is where you'll see some of those connections between the 2 rail corridors. And then the last category is the under negotiation and under discussion stations. And there are activities from Treasure Coast all the way to Miami-Dade County in various stages that I'm going to walk through. If you are expecting to see a station on here and it's not, we did go through kind of a subjective drawing the line, if you will, of what made the cut to get into this list. And it really was based on if there were formal discussions occurring and also the potential of a funding source. It made it onto the list, but we're certainly expecting that this will be a live document for you all and that we will be adding stations if all goes well over time. So now going into the existing status, a bit more detail. So this right in your backyard, the West Palm Beach station that you all know is active and up and running, or was rather, before COVID, so it is temporarily closed. But for some detail here, if you weren't aware, the land was purchased by Brightline for $3.8 million. And they did receive credits working with the city of 2.5 million in tax credits and then 1.3 million in development bonuses. And what was great, as you all know, with this station is that it also came with a residential tower, a new access road, and other infrastructure improvements. It's a beautiful station. I'm sure you've all ridden through it and attended there. So next is Fort Lauderdale for the existing station. We don't have any financial information on this station, but just wanted to highlight that it covers 60,000 square feet and also has a healthy size park and ride facility just to the west in the pink box there with a 576 vehicle capacity that we wanted to highlight to you all. And the third existing station, again, I'm sure you're aware of, is Miami Central, right in the heart of downtown Miami. No financial information exists for this station either, but we did want to note that it is a 9-acre complex, quite large. There's 2 residential towers at that bottom green square, and there's also office, commercial, and retail components. But I believe the board did a trip through all of the Brightline stations, but highly recommend when it's up and running to visit these again. So now going into the agreed to and underway status, and hopefully this adds some clarity to what you've heard over the past several months. So the first that I'm starting with, starting at the north, is the Northwood Connection. And this was funded by multiple partners, as you see there at the top of the screen. And this connection was actually part of a 3-project component with FDOT, the South Florida Freight and Passenger Rail Enhancements Project. So all 3 components, 2 of which Northwood made up, was about $47 million, of which 13 and some change came from the Tiger grant that they received. It's important to note that although the Northwood Connection, the rehabilitated component and the new component is constructed and active, as they call it, it is not operational at this time. So now moving down to the Boca Station, this was and is a $46 million project. And as a reminder, this was a recipient of the CRISI grant. As a reminder, that stands for Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement Grant. Although the agreements went through between Brightline and the city, they are still working through the development review process. There isn't a date currently confirmed of when that development review will be completed and the station up and running, but there is expectation, as you see there, it'll be operational by mid-2022. So now moving to Aventura, you'll see this is a bit more expensive at $76.7 million. The county authorized the purchase of a 3-acre property that you see in blue there across from the Aventura Mall for about $18 million plus $1.3 million in closing costs. And the county has agreed to fund, in addition to that, up to $57.4 million for the construction of the rail and station infrastructure. And they're able to do that through their local sales surtax that they passed quite some time ago. So they did approve that money to go towards this. The price is also a little higher because of a pedestrian bridge that is planned to connect the station on the west of Biscayne Boulevard to the Aventura Mall. Discussions are currently underway with the Florida Department of Transportation District 6 regarding the permitting and placement of that bridge. So more to come on that. The next is the Iris Little River connection, giving the ability of Tri-Rail to connect over to the Brightline rail corridor and ultimately down into the Miami Central Station. This was the third of the 3 projects for the South Florida Freight and Passenger Rail Enhancements Project I mentioned earlier, where the 3 projects in total was about $47 million. I do want to note that this connection is also constructed and considered active, but not yet operational. I also wanted to note, previously I mentioned Miami Central being existing, but we all know Tri-Rail is a component of that station. However, the Tri-Rail component is not yet up and running. Here is some financial information regarding the Tri-Rail component to the Miami Central station at about $70 million. There are agreements for Tri-Rail to have access into this station. So those agreements are in place. You see here the operations and maintenance funds of about 2.1 to 2.3 million a year. There are also track improvements, part of this, that were in addition to the IRIS connection I was just mentioning. So we look forward to adding this to the existing list at a date still yet to be determined as they work on positive train control approval on Brightline's side. So now wrapping up the last category is the under negotiation and under discussion stations. Starting again, heading back to the north end is the Treasure Coast. So as you probably recall, Brightline did submit requests for proposals asking cities in the area who would be interested, and Fort Pierce and Stewart both raised their hand. It does look like Stewart may be the likely location, but nothing official or confirmed yet there. There was a lawsuit that occurred between Martin County and Brightline that was settled. And here you see on the slide, it was noted in that settlement, splitting the cost of building at least one train station, including safety upgrades along the railroad tracks. So we will see how that proceeds over time. Next, congratulations, Palm Beach Gardens, on your mobility fee and mobility plan adoption and TOD ordinance. Very exciting to see. Certainly bumped you into the list of having formal activities ongoing for a rail station. So this was included, and you see just south of PGA Boulevard, we used your mobility plan to identify that location. And just wanted to note that we understand that Brightline was approached for potentially having a station there, but at this time we left it just kind of generic that it's a passenger rail station, but we look forward to keeping this updated as you continue discussions and move your plan forward. Next is Pompano Beach. So this is the third of the three connections between the CSX and FEC lines. This is estimated at about $77.7 million. Back in 2019, coordination did occur to get this connection moving. However, one of the property owners just was not interested. The location is actually just north of Atlantic Boulevard and south of Copans. So when that property owner said they were not interested, the connection project somewhat became dormant, but it is still on the plan and desired overall to envision our regional rail connection plan. Next is Broward County. So I was excited to find out that there are discussions underway and in process for a memorandum of understanding between the county and the Department of Transportation District 4 to reignite the project development and environmental study that had become somewhat dormant in the past due to issues with the New River. The New River is the blue dot, if you can see that on the screen. So there is some debate between whether the New River crossing would be a tunnel or a bridge. And in the past, the tunnel was favored by the stakeholders. However, due to environmental impacts and costs, it's really not feasible. So that's why it became dormant. But the conversation is up again, especially given Broward County recently passed their sales surtax. So no funding has been assigned to this project per se, but there is a source out there and discussions are ongoing. So we really look forward to continuing to hear that update between the county and the department. And just to note here, the Fort Lauderdale rather, Hollywood International Airport station has come up in discussion. So it's neat to hear you guys talking about that for the Palm Beach International Airport. Now the Northeast Corridor heading south into Miami, there are 6 potential stations being considered between the Aventura station that I already mentioned and the Miami Central station. And you can see there, it ranges from locations in North Miami all the way down to neighborhoods in Miami itself, ending at the Woodwood Edgewater area. Just recently, as of November 20th, the county did approve to enter into negotiations with Brightline and did set upper limits, as you see there, at about $50 million of an initial payment and a $12 million annual access fee. And I did hear from Brightline these access fees, if it's not obvious, go towards the billions of dollars they've invested in the double tracking and helping with the safety upgrades. And last on the list is Port Miami. The construction cost is estimated at about $15.2 million. And as it implies in the category it's in, this is not yet finalized, although looking at their website, one might think, looking at the Brightline website, one might think that this is finalized, but it is certainly still under negotiation as confirmed by Brightline representatives. You'll see here that Miami-Dade County earmarked a one-time contribution of $5.2 million for this location. And Brightline is contributing funds, as you see there as well on the slide. And the county does expect to recoup $49 million over a 30-year period through a passenger fee that they're exploring at this location. So more to come on this station as well. So with that, Chairman and Board, again, I truly appreciate the opportunity to do all of this research for you. I hope I clarified some confusion and happy to dive into any details that you may have.
Well, thank you so much, Jocelyn, for your update. There's certainly a lot going on here, that's for sure. I think that's a good
Exciting.
thing. Before we take comments from members of the board, do we have any public comments from those who are virtual?
No, Mr. Chair.
How about comments, public comments from anyone that's here? None? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comments on this agenda item and look for comments, questions from members on board. I think Mayor Grant, you first.
Yes, thank you. Jocelyn, that was a great presentation. It shows that there are things moving forward with our transit on the FEC. The one thing that Palm Beach County doesn't have is funding for any of it. And so that's something that hopefully this board over the next year or two, we can talk about how do we fund the transit development. I think it's very important. In my city, we had letters of interest for over a 2-acre parcel from the old Henry Flagler station. And so I think it's kind of imperative that we let the different municipalities know to hold off on certain developments so that we can better utilize it. The fact that we got some of the numbers from around our area gives us a better understanding how to plan. And I think one of the things that we do need to discuss is that it's in Palm Beach County is that we do not necessarily need a Miami hub for our trains. And, I'm looking forward to, taking the trains to Palm Beach Gardens and Jupiter somewhere in the near future.
Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any other members of the board like to make comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 3D. We're going to get a listing, update on the listing of fiscal year 20 obligated projects. Andrew, you're up.
Good morning again. I know it's running late in this meeting, so I'll be brief on this presentation. So this is the fiscal year 2020 annual listing of obligated projects. These are federal obligations. So what you won't see in this report are any state obligations. So a big piece of this is really missing in that to give you a full picture, but I'll try to talk through a few of those things. The federal obligations, we typically get around, when it comes to federal and state funding for the state, we invest heavily as a state in transportation. So the federal amounts around a third of the total budget when it comes to federal and state funding. You can just advance the next slide if you'd like, if it's not working for me. One second, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, so what are obligations? So these are our fiscal year 20 funding amounts. And so it starts with the Transportation Improvement Program. So that is the intent to spend funds from a specific source on a project, and allows for FHWA and FTA applications towards that project. And so what obligations are is FHWA's or FTA's commitment to reimburse up to the amount specified in the Transportation Improvement Program. A deobligation is an applicant's request to reduce the obligated funds afterwards. So this might be because a project still has some remaining costs that they never really needed to spend down, and it might be near closeout. So those are the things that typically get deobligated. So in the report, you'll see some pretty large differences sometimes between what was programmed in the TIP for fiscal year 20 and what was actually obligated for fiscal year 20. And there's a few reasons for that. And I'm just going to mention the two largest reasons you'll see that. One being FDOT swaps state and federal funds within a project. So they're not required to come to us, the TPA, for amendments when it comes to this switching funding sources, as long as the cost estimate doesn't really change. They're switching funding sources throughout the entire state in their work programs pretty frequently. So that's the main reason you'll see some major differences. And again, like I said, we're not tracking state funds in this obligation report. So that puzzle piece is missing. The second reason is Florida uses state funds to oversubscribe to federal aid programs and increase statewide totals each year. So what they really do is they have a program called Advanced Construction, which is what they use for a lot of their federal programs. So what they're doing with advanced construction funds, it's state funding that they're anticipating to be reimbursed with federal funds later on. And that can be up to 2 years later. So what you'll see is a project that's programmed in TIP, let's say in fiscal year 18 or 19 with state funds, advanced construction, but then it gets obligated in fiscal year 20. So you'll see a huge bump in the federal amount in fiscal year 20, but we never programmed anything in the TIP for fiscal year 20. So it's really just a reimbursement of that. So just examples real quick so I can show you. In your packet, we provided summary tables. This is just the first product on that summary table. And this is I-95 Managed Lanes project in south part of the county. You'll see no requests for federal funds in fiscal year 20, but you will see a large amount, $16.9 million in federal funds that were obligated. What's really happening is in fiscal year 2019, when this project was going under construction, $107 million was programmed using state funds. And then in fiscal year 20, after I was able to reimburse some of these funds by with expenditures with federal dollars. So they were swapping out state and federal funds. The next example I have for you, go next slide. Thank you. Is Florida uses, again, that the oversubscribes to federal aid programs using an advanced construction funding source. And so for this example, I-95 interchange accolades, again, a large amount, $10.2 million, federally obligated in fiscal year 20. What was really happening was that in fiscal year 2019, the state had $28 million programmed towards this product with advanced construction funds, and they were able to reimburse around $10.2 million in fiscal year 20. So that's why you'll see these big differences in the summary table we provided. This is just a summary of what we provided in the backup based on our TIP sections. So this is the program amounts in the TIP, the obligated, and the difference. That first one I wanted to point out is the largest one, that $30 million difference when you see what was programmed in the TIP for federal funds versus obligated. And there's two examples I just mentioned on I-95. That is really a lot of the bulk of that. And it's really throughout the entire program why those things are really occurring. So every product really has its own story. So we're not going to go into any of those details, but those are the major differences. And I believe I have one more for you. Next slide, sorry. It's not working for me. These are the FTA program amounts. And so you'll see the same thing, description, the request, and then the obligations. There's only really one I wanted to make note of for you, and that is the Palm Tran FTA formula funds that they receive from FTA every year. This is section 5307, 5339, and 5311. So we have a programmed amount in the TIP about what they're anticipated to spend in fiscal year 20. But then you'll see the obligations column for those rows all at zero. And so there's a large funding difference there. Well, what happened this past year is Palm Tran did receive a lot of federal funding towards the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So you can see $51.2 $1.8 million total that they received this year. And really, they're working their way on spending down those funds, and they didn't tap into those other FTA funds that they typically have to spend every year. So that money will be rolled over into the next year as well, fiscal year 21, as we're in now. And so they will apply and try to obligate those funds this current year and then next year as well. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Do we have any comments from members of the public, either virtual or local?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, being none, then we'll close public comments to this agenda item. This was an informational brief. Are there any questions from members on the board? Okay, seeing none, then thank you, Andrew. We're going to move forward to agenda item 3E, partner agency updates. I believe we're going to get an update from Clinton Forbes on PalmTran.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board. It's still morning. I know you've had a long meeting, so I won't keep you long, but I was actually watching the meeting virtually, and I was just delighted by the opening conversation about mobility. And so I got in my car and rushed over here to continue the conversation. And so I think appropriate to kind of end the conversation with this discussion. First, I'd like to update you on what's happening with PalmTran. I tell you, I am tremendously proud of our organization, specifically the bus operators and all the frontline workers, really who have stepped up. And they are the frontline heroes that we've all been talking about, because they've worked through 10 months of this pandemic. Even at the beginning, when we were still learning about this disease, and no one really knew, how it was contracted, how severe it was. They soldiered up and they continued to operate transit service for people who needed mobility to get to important medical appointments, as well as access important services like the grocery store. And so I'm tremendously proud of them. I tell you, at the beginning of the pandemic, we lost about 40% of our ridership across all modes. That was March, April, it dipped to 60%. And we are teetering around 36 to 40% reduction in ridership over, when compared to last year's ridership. I am pleased to kind of report that we are ahead of our peers in terms of those reductions. Like Broward County Transit, initially they lost about 75% of their ridership. I'm sure their ridership is beginning to come back. JTA, the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, 60%. The Hillsborough Area Regional Transportation Authority, 65%. So we didn't take such a severe hit when compared to our peers, but it was a pretty severe hit nonetheless. So our mission, and as I look at the vision of the TPA, a safe, efficient, and connected multimodal transportation system, our vision at PalmTran is to provide access to opportunity for everyone, safely, efficiently, and courteously. And so we've had a kind of paradigm shift of our mission statement, of our mission, right? Because that efficiency was always big for PalmTran. We looked at ridership, we looked at accidents, we looked at, customer service, and ridership was our biggest metric. And so we've shifted from really, looking at ridership to really looking at safety. And so we concerned ourselves with the safety of both our employees and the customer during this pandemic. So we geared up working with the county administrator, the incident commander, the executive policy group. We supplied PPE to all of our bus operators. Initially, the bus operators were the first to really wear the mask on the buses, and they have blue uniforms, so you thought doctors were driving the buses, with the blue PPE. We initiated a robust cleaning program where we have currently people out in the field. As people alight our buses, our cleaners hop on the buses and sanitize the rails, the seats, which is really palpable and conspicuous for the customer and builds confidence that, this is a safe system to ride. And so we're still doing that. We installed protective barriers for our bus operators. on all of our buses, which, mitigates the transmission of airborne fluids and from both the bus operator and the customer. We call them our bus operator office doors. And so we installed those automated wheelchair lifts. And this was quite an investment where all of our buses are equipped now with automated wheelchair securement devices so that the customer, there's very little interaction between the bus operator and the wheelchair passenger. The customer boards the bus and they get in position, they press a button and they're secured automatically. Hand sanitizers on all of our buses, UV lighting, we've installed that in the air filtration system on our buses. We've instituted capacity limits where currently, buses could seat about 40 customers, standing 70. We have limited the capacity to 20 customers per bus, which has created some inconvenience for some of our customers, but everyone is understanding. And so we've implemented that to promote social distancing and of course, mask requirement. Everyone who boards our buses, they must wear a mask or that bus does not move. That's how that works. It's a safety issue. Everyone has to wear a mask. And we've gotten really 99% compliance with that, or a very late bus. You saw the CARES Act, that was a lifeline that was thrown to the transit industry that was sorely needed. It was $25 billion over nationally that was let through the CARES Act, and PalmTran, through its formula dollars, received 50 million of that. Many of these initiatives and our reduction in fare collection has been supported by those dollars. So we are really appreciative. We're looking forward to the next act, which will also include some transit funding, because we're going to be in this, while we see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the vaccine, we still are going to be in this, we believe, for the next year and a half, 2 years, in terms of the provisions that we have to make in order to keep our customers safe through this pandemic. And so that's just an update on the safety. One of the things we've capitalized on is kind of during this time, we have redoubled efforts to work on some of our key projects, and many of them are funded in the program, in your TIP, and Long Range Transportation Plan. Bus shelter RFP, which you have funding in that program for that. That's been let, it's been advertised, and we're looking forward to that solicitation coming to fruition and begin to install bus shelters throughout this community. The Delray expansion, we're near complete with that $25 million project that's in your program. Looks like January will be substantially complete. In February, we'll be moving into the building. We'll keep you posted on a ribbon cutting, a socially distanced ribbon cutting in January. It'll be outside as well. The Fair Tech project, which is also in your program, the Fair Technology program and interoperability, we are going to provide an update to the board at a workshop in January on where we are with that project, but we'll be implementing that in the spring of next year. And RPM 2.0, and I'll end with this project. That's the Route Performance Maximization Project. As you recall, in 2018, we endeavored in that project and made some huge gains with our system network. We redesigned the entire network. Well, RPM 2.0 really aligns with your earlier discussion. And so we will be kicking that project off soon. And that's really taking a three-pronged approach to this next phase of RPM. One, we're going to look at first and last mile. Okay, first and last mile, either provided by the current providers such as Uber, Lyft, and all of the small transit and transportation partners that we have around the county, or developing a system of our own. We're also going to look at microtransit. And so one thing we learned, I always say crisis, you get opportunities out of crisis, and it also breeds innovation. And one of the things we learned, and we discussed this with our board, is that the Go Glades pilot project in the Glades region was microtransit. We were piloting that for a year. And it was 4 routes that had fixed route, and the routes would deviate and pick someone up from their home upon request. Well, because we needed to implement social distancing and we really couldn't manage people at stops like we do with a fixed route, we had to shift, we had to pivot to a full on demand. It was done dial a ride, but we also are implementing the ride hailing services through technology, but right now it's dial a ride. And amazingly, the ridership increased by 20–30%. So that's the only mode of our 3 modes, fixed route, Palm Tran Connection, and Go Glades, that have actually seen an increase in ridership because of the service approach that we have led. So a part of this RPM 2.0 is to really explore that option more for this community, cities in different parts of this community. Where else can that work? In Palm Beach County. It's working in the Glades region. Where else can that work? And so that's what we'll be exploring as well. And third, we're going to build and work very closely with Nick and team on the 561 plan, the transit corridor component of the 561 plan. So I think your discussion is extremely apropos. And, it was a discussion at the board on the strategic plan about whether mobility should be included as a priority or a separate priority. I can't really weigh in on that, but I can tell you that this subject needs more attention. We need to elevate this discussion because many communities that win the conferences, that get all the big Fortune 500 companies to move in the area, they look at the transportation network and the opportunity for mobility. And we're not there yet. So if we want to win, we have to pay this more attention, and we have to get ready for our future, which is your job. Your job is to look at our future, not for ourselves mostly, but for Todd Bondlaren's new baby girl and the unborn. Okay, so that's your role, and we really implore you to look at, it all kind of also boils down to, at the end of the day, a funding source, right? Because we have finite resources. You already have $160 million investment in Palm Tran annually, $160 million. And that's not because of the geography of this community. That's not nearly enough money to have a viable transportation network and transportation plan. So where does that other funding? We've looked at this. I've been in this business 30 years. I've worked for 4 transit properties. I've worked for 2 independent authorities and 2 transportation properties that are under the governance structure of the county. And I can tell you that the transit agencies and authorities that move the needle on improving mobility through premium transit, that funding source is a dedicated source of funding that's a surtax. If you look at Miami-Dade, I was a part of that initiative. Surtax, over $200 million annually. Broward County, they passed their initiative in 2018. Surtax, dedicated source of funding, $150 million annually. And in 2018, just an interesting trivial fact here. In 2018, 83% of the ballot measures for transit surtaxes passed. That's 30 out of 36 ballot measures, including Broward County's, passed. And so we really need to start thinking about funding sources. I know there's a lot of discussion about a lot of unique ways how to approach this, but there's also a very standard staple in the industry, and that's a surtax. And so thank you for the opportunity to address you. I am inspired by the conversation about mobility, and I'm looking forward to working with you on ensuring that we have a bright future in public transportation in Palm Beach County.
Well, before we take comments from the board or comments from the public, I just want to say that that list of items that you discussed will be looked at by this board, and I'm targeting the first quarter of next year to put together some realities behind that. As I said before, moving in that as being an abstract discussion to a real actionable plan. I think I've gone on record before publicly and stated that we probably at some point will have to look at some type of transportation fee or tax at the county level. So it's across the entire county. I tell you something I'd like you to think about. Maybe you could get with Nick and his staff. We need to start putting some numbers around what is it we need to generate? What's the funding level that we need to be at to reach a level of reality of being able to do some of the many, many things that we're looking to do from a public transportation standpoint. So that would be very helpful to get that kind of input as well and grounding. I do have a question for you regarding safety, and I don't know, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but at this point in time, as the vaccinations are being rolled out, and they're talking about, who's kind of first in line, clearly your people are kind of on the front lines in terms of dealing with the public on a daily basis, and you just enumerated all of the safety measures that you've already put in place. Do you have any notion whether or not your folks would be in line early to get vaccinated?
Right. I was on Channel 25 earlier this week. I'm not sure if you saw that. And they asked me that question. And again, the bus operators, the grocery store clerks, they are the frontline people that we've been talking about. Surely we know that the medical industry, our nurses, our doctors, our emergency personnel, our police officers, our first responders, they're head of the line. They're there. They have to get it first. But after that, how do we begin to prioritize, other frontline workers? And I'll tell you, just by the sheer number and volume of people that bus operators come in contact with, I think we should be somewhere near the top to receive that vaccine. And, we're looking at, 30,000 pre-COVID, 30,000 people a day, over 10 million customers in a year. And so there's a lot of contact, I think, with customers, and our riders are coming back. Fixed route is probably the best invention in public transportation in terms of how to move people efficiently. That's just not bus. I'm talking light rail, heavy rail, and bus. It's one of the best inventions. So I do believe that our customer base will come back, and a part of that has to be vaccinating our bus operators.
All right. Do we have any comments from members of the public, either virtual or local?
I don't have any public comments, but I do have Vice Mayor Weinroth with his card.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Forbes, there's a lot to unpack here in your presentation and what's gone on in front of us, and probably it would be worthy of an agenda item coming forward at one of our future meetings. And the hour is late, so I don't want to take a lot of time, but certainly first want to commend you and the organization that you represent, the frontline workers that have kept our buses running during this pandemic. It's really a credit to our employees that they have been willing to be out there, put themselves out in front of this virus to move our stakeholders so that they can continue to be employed. This is a lifeline for many of our residents. And as you said, this is an access to opportunity. And as Commissioner Weiss has said, this is something we need to be talking about as far as access equity. And I think, there's a tremendous disparity that's been created by this pandemic. The disparity has been created by people not having access. And our investment in broadband, the county invested over $10 million of CARES dollars in broadband. As you've alluded to, we got $50 million from the government to keep Palm Tran running. As Ms. Beebe mentioned, there was another $39 million that went to our airport. So thankfully, the wheels of transportation didn't grind to a halt, but there is an urgency. And I think Commissioner Bernard mentioned at our last meeting, we need to have a dedicated funding source. And it may require us to consider a transportation authority of the type that we're seeing in other areas of the country, so that we can deal with PalmTran, Tri-Rail, even Brightline, even though that's a private entity, and making sure that we are developing this public transportation to be able to meet the needs of our stakeholders going forward. I'm very happy to hear about the bus shelter RFP. You know that I have been all over you for the last 4 or 5 years since I was on the PTSB. saying that choice riders need to be given the opportunity to be out there and be sheltered from the elements and feel comfortable waiting for a bus so they can go to work. I'm also concerned, and I've addressed this with you by email, that we can't be allowing the interval between buses to get longer and longer, especially at this point in time when people are relying upon public transportation to get to their jobs. And so I'm going to reiterate my feeling that anything we can do to increase the number of trips during the commuting hours so that people feel that if they miss one bus, the next one is not going to be an hour away. Or if the bus that comes by has too many passengers on it and for social distancing requirements, they are not allowed to get on, that they're not going to have to wait another hour. We need to address these issues. And I know that you're looking at them. There's a lot of opportunity here. I think the pandemic has done a lot to bring these discussions to the forefront much quicker than probably we would have before. And I'm very encouraged by what has been able to be accomplished at this point, but I think we have a lot more to do. And I'm looking forward to, as a both TPA member and as a commissioner, working with you to make sure that you're going to have the resources to continue to champion the transportation and mobility for our residents here in Palm Beach County. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I just make just one point that Commissioner actually made in the meeting the other night at the board, which I think is a part of what this body needs to be thinking about. And that is, of course, we have to have a plan and we need to continue to build on that plan. But there's no greater time to accelerate any plans, because with the new administration coming in, there will be opportunity to build infrastructure with federal dollars. And they're going to be looking for, as they did several years ago, as you may recall, in the ARA dollars, the American Reinvestment Act, where they looked for shovel-ready
projects. Yep.
And so you made that point, and it was spot on, Commissioner. We have to really begin to focus on, the opportunity that's going to exist over the next couple of years, because I do believe infrastructure is going to be a big platform of the new administration. And definitely don't want to miss out on the opportunity.
That's an absolutely valid point. Couldn't agree with you more. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? You want to make? No. No other questions or comments then? We now move to agenda item 4A. This is just for informational purposes. If there is nothing on the list of these administrative components that you would like to have discussed, I'll move right down to the adjournment. Are there any? All right, I'll next, thank you all for, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joni, I'm sorry.
I just texted, this is in regards to the Palm Springs request on the TIM amendment for Kirk Road. I'm trying to find out when that's scheduled for the BCC. I do want to express that our residents are very concerned about Kirk Road becoming a 5-lane section in a residential area. So at this point in time, what we've done is request that the board consider making changes to that. So any support I could get from other municipalities or this board in the future, I'm just not sure right now at this moment of the schedule. But
You
I'll
wanna
be
comment on
reaching
that?
out to all the county commissioners on an individual basis.
You want to comment on that? We, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just as a reminder to the rest of the TPA governing board, that Village of Palm Springs did reach out to the TPA in November of 2019, asking us to remove any potential widening from the TPA's long-range transportation plan. And at the request of the village, we did that. What they're asking now is for the county to put additional safeguards in place by amending the county's comprehensive plan to reflect that they will support the village's desire for that corridor and commit not to widen, essentially commit not to widen the roadway. It's really at the discretion of the TPA governing board as to whether the TPA should engage in the conversation between the village and the county regarding the request to amend the county's comprehensive plan.
But does that prohibit us as a board, the TPA board, from at least issuing a resolution of support?
I'd rather wait till after we go to the BCC at this
Okay.
point in time to figure.
All right.
The issue is the language and the methodology and the coordination we would like to proceed through with the county to work through the issue, because we don't know eventually what the ultimate outcome would be.
Going to be, right.
So I just wanted the board aware that it's
Okay.
in, that we have made that request and the county's currently considering it.
We are so aware.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chair, at our last meeting, I made a point of saying that we need to reduce the silos between the municipalities, TPA, and the county. And I think that this is certainly one of those situations where we all need to be on the same page. And I certainly would, embrace the idea of the three parties getting together to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. Thank you.
Okay,
Mayor, you also have Mayor Grant with his 10 card.
sure.
Mayor, I'm sorry, can you turn your microphone on? Thank you.
In regards to the FDOT's letter of the Woolbright Road interchange, it specifically states any palm trees. I don't know if there's any palm trees at that interchange. I think it's mostly sea grapes. And so I guess the only request is that if we maintain any native trees to be there replanted instead of just palm trees.
Mr. Chair, I guess I'll respond as best I can. Landscaping is probably my weakest element as far as transportation planning goes. One thing I wanted to point out is the DOT letter did respond by saying they would relocate any palm trees within the project limits and that they will also program a landscaping project to immediately follow the construction. And so what I understand is they will be planting new landscape material. I can certainly pass on the request to relocate the sea grapes or other native vegetation to the extent that those types of landscape materials can successfully be transplanted. We will pass that request on to them. But I did want to emphasize that in response to the TPA board's resolution, the DOT has committed to programming a landscaping phase immediately following construction to restore with new material the level of landscaping that exists at the interchange.
Okay. Well, thank you for the clarification. I saw that it was in 2026, so. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, then I'm going to move to agenda item, the final item, which is adjournment. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 21st, which is next year. I want to wish everyone a safe and happy and blessed holiday season. And thank you all for persevering. That is fully it for the meeting. But we had a lot of things to discuss. So we stand adjourned. Thank you.